What's the craziest story you've heard of a couple breaking up? My son got a new boy in his class when he was in primary school. We live in France, so the school system is different. They quickly became very good friends as it turned out they only lived down the road from us. A nice family. Mom was a teacher at the same school, and they also had a daughter that was 2 years older than the boys. He also met several times for drinks with his family, did some activities together like hikes and beach picnics. You'd say we were quite good friends. A couple of years later, the old school principal retires and the new principal starts shamelessly pursuing our friend. Phone calls, flowers, gifts. She's blown away by his attention and starts an affair with him. For example, the kids went on a 3-day school trip in the mountains. She was one of the accompanying teachers. And the principal goes with them. He never went to school trips otherwise. The affair was the talk of the whole school. The son told my son, Mr. B, principal, will be my stepdad soon. There was a messy divorce as far as I know. We're not too much in contact with his family anymore. Our sons are still friends and still in the same class. The principal and the teacher are still at school. They got married straight after the divorce was finalized. The kids are still in that school. I really feel sorry for the guy. He was really nice, really loved his wife, was a great dad. He really didn't deserve this. Just another day in France. Story 2. Friend was an underwater welder. Terrible job, but pays well. They won't let you work after a certain age though. 40. Friend and partner had bought an amazing house in the Philippines near where he worked, and every dollar was now going into his retirement savings because his career was so time limited. Work was a couple weeks out at sea, then a couple weeks back and so on. One day he gets home from a shift, discovers his partner has sold the house and put all the proceeds as well as all the contents of his savings into her parents' name, then bugged out. Yes, she had been cheating on him. My friend tried, but couldn't get any substantial money back, due to everything having been both in their names and nothing obvious in the ex-partner's accounts anyway. The in-laws were somehow untouchable, so he was close to retiring and living the sweet life in comfort in a glorious home he owned outright, to be nearly washed out of his career and also totally penniless. He moved back to Canada and lived in a crowded shared house with a bunch of 20-somethings and started from scratch as a construction worker at 40. Story 3. My dad told me this heartbreaking story. Back in the early 70s, women in my country were not allowed to have or manage their own bank accounts. This lady, a stay-at-home mother of 5, would often come to the bank where my dad worked. She came from a pretty wealthy family, so she had savings, but as she married, her entire wealth passed to her husband. She comes that day and asks for some cash, as she would usually do. My dad checks, double checks, triple checks. The bank account is empty. He goes to his colleagues, and one of them tells that the poor woman's husband had come earlier in the day and emptied the account. The lady turns white as paper. My dad thought she was going to faint and storms out of the bank. She came back a few days later, absolutely devastated. Hubby had abandoned them, her and the 5 children. Not only was he gone, but fully disappeared. Like she could not trace him. After a few years, I think she discovered he had gone to South America, and she and the kids were left to starve. My dad tried everything in his small bank executive power to help her get her money back, but hubby had every right to do what he did. That poor lady turned from being one of the wealthiest clients to the brink of homelessness in a day. She had to return to her parents with the 5 kids, suffer the guilt and the shame and so on. Thankfully for her, she found love again a few years later and got in a better situation. But as my dad said, I never understood how a man could be so cruel. Story 4. Guy lived in Seattle. The girl lived in Mississippi. They met online and fell in love. Guy would fly down every month or two to take her out and spend time with her and her family. He would bring her family gifts every visit. Her family absolutely adored the guy, hoping he'd marry their daughter. One of the cutest and most perfect couples ever. Just a romance out of a Disney movie. Almost 2 years later, Guy decides it's time, packs his bags and drives across the country to move closer to her. They were both super excited. She was his whole world and his future. Less than a week after moving, the girl cheated on and left the guy for someone with a perm and Harry Potter glasses. Guy drowned himself in drinks and ended up taking his own a few months later. He was my best friend. They didn't deserve that. Just a wild situation to break up in. I'm sure if he knew people heard the story and had these things to say, he'd be really happy. This guy was the best of us. Life had dealt him a bad hand on numerous occasions. He would tell me about her a lot. Dude was really happy. I think the most troubling thing is that he joked a few times about, man, if something this perfect falls apart, that's it for me, bro. I wish I took him more seriously. Picture perfect relationship 2 years and counting. Well, it would be strange to still be long distance. And remember, she was excited about him moving, so it's not an uh-oh, too much situation. The final nail in the coffin, as if it was too much, she would have left. She straight up cheated on and abandoned the dude. Not many excuses for that. That's pretty foul. Guess temptation got the best of her, and she was young. Probably didn't foresee the consequences of her actions. I wouldn't say it's her fault, though. That dude did what he did to himself. That was a poor choice, and he should have sought professional help, but she should have been a better person. There are ways to end relationships without destroying people. Funny thing is, I checked out her social media after everything went down to see if she said anything about it, and all she had to say was that her parents kicked her out for what she did. Karma, I suppose. Story 5. Knew a girl in 5th grade and was in the middle school band with her. Likewise, when we moved to high school, we were in a high school marching band together. Our middle school band teacher and her high school band teacher are a married couple in their 30s. No kids. Junior year of high school, the rumored rampant affair between the high school, male, band teacher, and my junior and high school classmate had been found out by school or police or the whole town to be factual. The police came and removed the small couch out of the band director's office during school hours. He vanished, and so did my classmate. The poor guy's wife, our middle school band teacher, stays with him in spite of it, and the very next year falls seriously ill with aggressive cancer that ended her life very soon after diagnosis. Then the ex-band director and the classmate of mine are officially a couple. They married when she was still young, with her parents' consent. They've been married all this time. We're now mid-30s, so significantly longer than first marriage, and have had 2 children together. Absolutely the most insane saga. Story 6. High school sweethearts. It was her first love. Married, had 3 kids. He has a well-paying job high up in tech for the government, but it requires him to travel. She's a stay-at-home mom. Married for a long time. If I had to guess, I'd say probably over 15 years. Over the years, he comes back from traveling from work less and less. Seems distant, even with the kids. She's suspicious. Googles his name. A photo comes up of him at a father-daughter dance with a little girl who's not theirs. She comes to find out that he had a whole other life. A girlfriend, a child, a house, etc. In the city, he had to travel for work. The other woman knew about them, apparently didn't care. She takes him to court in the divorce, trying to get alimony and child support, borrows tens of thousands from her family members to help pay lawyer fees. This divorce process lasted years with all the appeals. In the end, very little alimony is awarded and child support for the one kid who is turning 18 in a year or 2. Other 2 children are over 18. Turns out he had friends in high places, including in the courts, and had a lot of money to pay for the best, most despicable divorce lawyers. Even after the grueling proceedings are over, he simply refuses to pay alimony or child support. She doesn't have the money to take him to court again, takes a lot of money out of the 401k account she got from him to get by while she tries to find a job as an unskilled worker who hasn't been in the workforce in 15 plus years. The 2 younger kids refuse to speak with their father unless they need money, which he usually doesn't provide regardless. They hate him. The oldest has a decent relationship with him. It was around more during her childhood than theirs. Story 7. My ex, who I lived with for something like 7 years, had encouraged me to stop drinking, and so I had. On my birthday, she brought home a bottle of red wine, a bottle of white wine, and some food for me to cook. Instead of cooking, we drank both those bottles of wine and went out in the town. We went to a bar on a pier and got pretty hammered. Then went to a karaoke bar and drank a little more. After that, I wanted to go play pinball, but she was done for the night. We got into a huge argument and both stormed off in different directions to walk home. I got home first. I was upset and intoxicated, so I locked the door so she wouldn't be able to come inside. This was stupid, and I can't defend it. It was a huge mistake. She knocked on the door for a while, and I eventually let her inside. She then called the cops and told them I had mistreated her. I hadn't touched her. So the cops came and took me to jail for the crime on my birthday. It was my first trip to jail. It was Long Beach or Compton County. On the way to jail, the cop said this happens all the time, and he was sure she'd call and clear things up when she sobered up and I'd be out. Instead, I spent 2 weeks in jail while she got on the plane and went to my birthday party where she said I had to stay home for work. She gathered gifts that were for me and even blew out my birthday candles. I never got the gifts, all while I was in jail. There's more to the story, but long story short is that they let me out of jail and never pressed any charges because nothing happened, and that's how that relationship ended. I honestly don't know for sure how they can detain me for 2 weeks with no charges, but my understanding is that this has something to do with the fact that it was California and a crime. So they had to investigate it, and they don't want an opportunity for the potential mistreatment to threaten the accuser to back down from the story. They wouldn't have been able to even talk to her for over a week because she was across the country partying with my friends. But truly, I don't know. They explained nothing to me and I had no way to contact the outside world. I didn't even know if anyone knew I was in jail. They gave me no help or instructions. It was a nightmare, clearly. A fun part of the story is that I was locked up with a bunch of Crips and I'm a white computer nerd. I thought I'd get myself mocked or something, but I was never once involved in anything like that. On day 3, I was so depressed I hadn't eaten the entire time, and this dude, covered in tattoos, a scary guy, sat down next to me at breakfast and gave me a really nice talk about how I had to eat. He generally seemed concerned because I was absolutely destroyed. And that's the day an Iceman from the Crips did a little to lift me up. Story 8. Happened to my cousin. She met a guy online, dating, then eventually married, together about 10 to 15 years. She already had 2 sons from a previous marriage, and eventually she had 1 daughter with him. Things are always kind of rocky with him, but life keeps moving until she starts doing very well in life. She gets her master's degree and gets a nice promotion to assistant director at her job. He doesn't like this. He's just a barber and feels intimidated by her. They get into an argument and she decides enough is enough. Husband leaves. A week later she's sleeping and awakens to her husband harming her. Figures if I can't have her, no one can. Their daughter runs into the rooms and screams, startling the husband. The husband leaves the house. One of her sons runs into the rooms and applies pressure on the wound and calls 911, saving her life. The husband walks to the police station and tells them he ended his wife, not knowing she actually lived. He's currently in jail, awaiting sentencing. My cousin, still in therapy, is doing well and trying to move past her trauma. Story 9. It's over 25 years ago, so my memory is a bit blurry, and I might have gotten some details wrong, but here it goes. A friend of mine, A, from high school, had a girlfriend, B, for a while. They were living together, but truthfully, none of us in the group of friends really liked her. In any case, one day she got pregnant as she forgot to take the pill. I don't remember the timeline exactly, but in any case, the baby was born and a guy friend of hers, C, lives with them for a while to help with caring for the baby. That guy, by the way, was super religious and not straight. His church was very tolerant or something. So things between A and B grew sour, so she moved out. I think she tried to take the baby with her, but she was deemed by the authorities not to be mentally fit to care for the baby. In any case, A and C were now taking care of the baby, and to everyone's surprise, A rediscovers his gender and gets officially together with C. I visited A and C a long while after the drama, and they were loving parents to a smart and healthy daughter. Oh, and then a few years after that, I randomly saw B on TV telling her story about being a pathological liar. That was bizarre, to say the least. Story 10. I work in a hospital setting, and the doctor culture is wild. About a month ago, a doc I work with in ED suddenly went out of the office and literally ran towards the back door of the department. Nobody heard a rapid response call for any of the floors, and we had no reports of incoming trauma PT. So everyone just assumed he had received panic value notice for one of his own patients. Nope. Turned out his wife, an OBGYN from a neighboring hospital, somehow found out about his AP, an NICU specialist, and showed up on the maternity or PED or NICU floor with her brother and sister-in-law to confront the woman. According to NICU staff, her ED doctor ended up telling his AP that, paraphrasing, while she had taught him a great deal and he enjoyed their close collaborations, it would be best if she sought employment at a different institution. And he would be happy to provide her with a shining reference letter. The wife apparently spat words for about 5 minutes and left. The sister-in-law told the AP she better never make her FB profile public, and that was what everyone thought was the end of that. It's been roughly 1 month since that incident. The NICU specialist hasn't left the hospital, but has found a new beau in MICU. ED Doc has revealed that he's heartbroken because he just discovered his wife has been having an affair with one of her residents. A woman who was 13 years younger than he is. It's an intense environment in all fronts. Where do they find the time, the energy for all these shenanigans? Story 11. For context, military. Roommate owned the house we lived in. He was kind of a goober. At work, this new E1 shows up, and she's absolutely gorgeous. A few weeks go by and suddenly she's dating my roommate. For more context, in most branches, lower ranks live in barracks, and once you're promoted high enough, you get paid an allowance for housing and get to move out on your own. So maybe a month goes by and suddenly she's not leaving our house. He's absolutely having the time of his life. She's an angry hammered and causes a bunch of problems for all of us, but my roommate can't see past her. She provided nothing to the household. She was the most important person there. Something wasn't right. A few years go by and she promotes a few times and she makes E4. She gets her housing allowance. She was gone that day. Roommate was devastated. I felt horrible for the guy. He had bought a ring days prior. Story 12. Friend of mine. He had been in a relationship for a couple years with this girl and even got an apartment far from his hometown so she can go to the college, offering her 2 free semesters. He's bending over for her, giving her all he can. One day he comes home from work early to find her in bed with some guy. He kicks the guy out and ends his relationship with her. They're stuck in the same apartment for leasing issues, so he couldn't just kick her out or leave. He had to deal with months of her doing crazy stuff. For some reason, she thought because they were under the same roof, he was still her boyfriend. When the lease was over, he packed his stuff and left immediately. He then gave her his address and tried to completely block her from his life. She managed to find out where my friend works and sent her brothers to pester him at work. He ended up having to change jobs. He eventually found a new girlfriend and started planning on moving back to his hometown. Before doing so, he found out that he had a warrant for his arrest. Turns out his ex told police he mistreated her and showed the police pictures of her from the time she got into a bar fight. My friend turned himself in to prove his innocence. A court date was set up. My friend had a long list of proof against her and was ready to take her on. This woman didn't even show up to court. My friend won the court case and he hasn't heard from her since. Story 13. My aunt and uncle. My aunt had been cheating and my cousin found out by accident when she had to borrow her mom's phone. She confronted her mom and said, "You have to tell Dad, but don't do it while I'm home. I will go to my friend's house this weekend. You can tell him then." My aunt promises to do it that weekend. When my cousin comes home Sunday, nothing has changed. This becomes a pattern that lasts for 3 months. My aunt promising to tell my uncle, my cousin leaving the house and coming home to find out her mother lied again. When my aunt finally tells my uncle both my cousins are home, a huge fight ensues. First between my aunt and uncle and then between my aunt and cousin. My cousin ends up locking herself in the bathroom. And when she went to open the door, my aunt brings an axe to break down the door. About a year or two later, my cousin moves in with us because her mom is more or less driving everyone insane during the divorce, and her father doesn't seem to want her because he blames her for not telling him sooner. Both my mother and I do everything we can to avoid seeing my aunt. This happened 15 years ago, and my aunt is still a cheater, liar, and manipulator. She's learned nothing, doesn't understand why we won't talk to her. Imagine being adopted and your adopted parents treat you like this. Story 14. This happened to me. Yesterday, actually. It's not the craziest, but still has me thrown for a loop. My now ex-boyfriend left me yesterday without a word. We've been living together for almost a year. We dated almost 10 years ago when I lived back home. He had somewhat recently gone back in touch, talked for months, and decided to give it another shot. He moved across the states to be with me again. I thought everything was going perfectly. Literally not a clue in the world. He acted totally normal. I love yous, called me on my first break at work every day, laughing, joking around like normal. I mean, everything was normal. I left yesterday to take my daughter to her dad's in another state, and 10 minutes before I got home, he called me and told me he was on his way back home, and he didn't want to have this conversation face to face. I got home, ran upstairs, and saw all his stuff gone. He really left and hasn't said why. Absolutely shocking. Still has me confused. He didn't have the to break up face to face, so he pretended everything was fine until I was gone for the day and packed up and left. Anyways, if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 15. A buddy of mine is just getting done with a divorce that was pretty wild. They had been married for 10 years until just recently. The guy was a serial cheater or flirter on the best days, but he hadn't been so blatantly caught until this. A couple of times over the years, she had caught him talking to other women online, and he had said he had stopped. I think he actually did for quite a while. The previous time had almost caused a divorce. Anyway, it turns out he did have a second secret Facebook account and occasionally messed around in there. His sister-in-law found the account and contacted him with a fake account, and things got steamy. They were arranging a meetup when she revealed she knew his wife and was going to share the chats and tried to blackmail him. Also, it turns out he was broke and had burned through savings and racked up a ton of debt the wife didn't know about. Sister-in-law hands over the chats, wife kicks him out and files for divorce immediately. He's been couch surfing since and kind of a wreck. He had really done a number on their finances prior to that, so she may be screwed soon, too. It was very sudden and dumb. Last time he was caught flirting online, multiple people, myself included, had warned him he was being really reckless. Story 16. Not heard, but witnessed. Cue me, only a worker in an adult healthy fitness toys and clothing store. In comes this good-looking black couple, both about 25-ish and obviously still fresh into the relationship. Both start out over by the lingerie. Both are very flirty. Both are comparing what might look good on each other. No problems. Then they turn to the wall of toys and, well, the dude looks like he has an early onset of size envy. He's going quiet fast while the gal was laughing at just about every size and shape. She then picks up one that we have labeled the Holy One, a wobbly crucifix. She then starts cracking up, showing him the thing jiggling and goes, "By the power of Christ, you shall be done." At this point, I recognize the expression in the dude's face. He was a very religious man. And while she's laughing, he turns to me with the look of a man who had the thought, "This woman ain't for me." But credit to him, he toughed it out until he got to the counter. See, at our counter, we sold flags that support all kinds of stuff, from the progressive rainbow to the kennel clubs to the leather scene. And she asks to buy the pride flag. She was pulling out her credit card. The dude had to ask, "So who's bisexual?" "Me, honey. Why do you think I have so many girlfriends?" I tell you what, I have never seen a dude do the full Michael Jackson color change in a matter of seconds. I mean, dude went from chocolate milk to whole milk before my eyes, and I swear his eyes were just gone. Brain shacked out for a one-way trip to Hawaii. By the time I had her flag in the bag, he was at the door muttering a bunch of prayers. She thanked me and said she would be back soon and followed him out. Well, she was right, because you see a few minutes later, she comes in huffing mad. "That son of a fish drove off without me." Thankfully, we were slow and I allowed her to call up a friend to pick her up, all the while trying to call him but kept being sent to voicemail. And after the 10th time, she was fully blocked on not just her phone, but also her social media. Dude ghosted her faster than my dad ghosted my mom for milk and cigarettes. Story 17. My dad. Both of my parents are very secretive about their early lives. I've heard bits and pieces through the years and have managed to piece together a story. Rather, a theory about how my parents got together. My parents met at where my mom currently works. My dad retired a while ago. My brother was born in June. My parents were married in November. My brother is 30, and my parents have been married for 30 years. You all might see where this is going. One night at a family Christmas, my grandpa, after having a few glasses of wine and playing a guitar, was telling a story. He told us about my mom and a fateful night where she threw my dad's belongings out of the house. Included in the belongings was my grandpa's guitar. He told us how it was smashed and how he loved that guitar. My aunt, coyly trying to protect my mom and not raise any suspicion, reminded him that wasn't how it happened. And my grandpa said, "Oh right, it was the other one." My brother and I were laughing along to the story so far, but both of our faces dropped and looked at each other and back at my grandpa. "Other one?" My aunt looked dismayed. She tells us that my dad was previously married and told us he doesn't like to talk about it. It was never mentioned again. I don't know much of anything about my dad's first wife. I eventually learned her name when we eventually asked him about it, and that she did in fact throw his belongings out, and that they divorced the same year he met my mom. So my theory is, my dad was married for however long he was thinking this woman, met my mom at work, conceived my brother with my mom, had a rough breakup that resulted in my grandpa's guitar being destroyed, got divorced and had a weapon wedding with my mom who would have been 2 months pregnant. This was longer than I thought it would be, and I guess not all too crazy of a story, but it was crazy when we found out that night and slowly pieced together a story about our parents that we never knew, all because my grandpa let some information slip. Story 18. Headed off to college, I found myself in a bit of a unique living situation. I ended up in the hood of Orlando, Florida in 2005, paying $400 a month for a bedroom in a 2-bedroom apartment and getting stuck with a rather peculiar roommate. But then I met this cool, kind of wealthy kid who let me move into his sunroom in his $1,000 a month 1-bedroom apartment in a better part of town, all for $250 a month. Keep in mind, this was 2005. It didn't have a door, but it couldn't get anyway. I was way too shy back then. So regardless, I was like, this is amazing. Just as I settled in, my new roommate started dating this pregnant girl. She wasn't too far along, but let's just say the vibes were off. I didn't like her much, and the feeling was mutual. Suddenly, this nice 1-bedroom plus sunroom apartment felt overcrowded with 3 people living in it. I found myself avoiding home as much as possible. Things between us got even more strained as our pregnancy became more visible, and reality seemed to hit my roommate. Breaking up seemed beyond his skills, so his solution? We should just move. Next thing I know, we're renting a house an hour away, which was a nightmare for my college commute. Juggling this new daily routine was a challenge, almost costing me my graduation, and he didn't graduate at all. He nearly managed to ghost her completely, but she caught us right as we were finishing packing the U-Haul. He bluntly told her, "I'm getting a new place and you're not moving in." She was devastated and we left. That was the last I saw of her. Story 19. A friend of mine was in his early 50s and approaching early retirement when he said he was seeing a girl on the side from his wife. This girl was 30 years younger than him and absolutely gorgeous, but the circumstances made me suspicious of her motivation. All of us in our group of friends urged him to be cautious and behave himself. But he divorced his wife, gave her the lovely, and I do mean absolutely lovely and fully paid for house, in the divorce and moved into the side chick's house. He marries her shortly afterwards, and you'll never guess who falls pregnant almost straight away. He retires and gets his lump sum payout, and they go on expensive holidays, buy new cars, and do the house up. After all that, the new wife decides that now's the time she doesn't love him. Who couldn't see that coming? Well, as it turns out, only him, because he's now absolutely screwed. She takes most of his pension and he has child maintenance payments to make too. He's had to return to work and will probably never retire as he's renting and can't afford to buy a home again. Even if he saves the deposit, he'll struggle to get a mortgage due to his age. He went from settled with a lovely wife, although you never know how happy people are in a relationship, a comfortable early retirement around the corner and a lovely home to almost broke, homeless, and in debt for years to come in the space of a few years, just for a younger woman. Story 20. Going to keep this very vague. I've told the story before on Reddit, but it was one of the most awkward moments ever. I was running a D&D game weekly online for a pitcher who just got in the MLB. He was paying me to run very long sessions to finish the game before the season. It was him, 2 friends, his wife, and sister-in-law. All of them seemed like good people. 3 months into the game, we're very near the end of Curse of Strahd, when he would be playing from his laptop at a training camp. That day, the sister-in-law left her mic unmuted during our break time, and we could hear the pitcher laughing and talking about the D&D game and dinner. He was supposed to be 3 states away. Everyone in Discord just disconnected from the call. The wife is screaming and crying. He came back confused. I said sorry and left as well. I didn't talk to anybody from that group again after that day. He squared up payment, and his friend said he knew he was cheating for a few years. Sad times. Story 21. Years ago, I'd been living with a woman for a couple of years. I caught her in a lie, which led to me pulling the string in that story. That led to another lie, which led to another, etc., etc. I discovered that she was a pathological liar. I think this term is way overused. Seriously, she lied about pretty much everything, even when there really was no reason or need to lie. She was really good at lying, which is why it took me so long to figure it out. That or I just wanted to believe her. Either way, we broke up. 3 weeks later, I moved across the country to start a new life. Before I left, I received a phone call from her uncle telling me that they were living near where I was going, and if I brought her with me, they would pick her up so she could live with them. Here's the problem. I had met her uncle and the voice on the phone was not him. She was trying to trick me into taking her thousands of miles with me and getting stuck with her. I called her bluff and told her no. When I got home, I was staying at my dad's house and I was woken up by my stepmom holding the phone saying, "I think you need to take this." It was my ex's mom. She started out by saying, "So since you're there, I guess you're not in Virginia?" I asked why she thought that I would be there. My ex had told her that I changed my mind and had flown back into town to marry her. She had taken her mom's car and left in a wedding dress. That was 3 days ago and I just want my car back. So I decided to help her track her daughter down. I just canceled her cell phone that I was paying for, but it was still activated until the end of the billing cycle. So I figured out where she was and who she was with by checking the voicemail on her phone, which was in my name. The voice saying, "Where are you? Can't wait to see you. I love you." Her voicemail was the guy who had pretended to be her uncle. I called him and when he answered, asked for her. He acted like she wasn't there, so I threatened to call the cops. Suddenly I hear her shrill voice yelling my name to the phone. I told her that her mom wants her car back and that she's pathetic for leaving in a wedding dress. Then I called her mom and told her where she was. Story 22. Man and wife play World of Warcraft. Make friends with a dude they play with that lives several hundred miles away. Find out his home situation is pretty bad. Offer to let him stay with him. Not sure about the duration, but dude and the wife cheat. Marriage ends, she goes to live with the dude. They break up over mistreatment, then she winds up dating a guy that used to flirt with her in chat rooms. Breaking her streak, he dumped her. She's typically the one who breaks up via cheating or otherwise. She winds up marrying a guy from Europe who I think stayed slightly longer than necessary to get his green card. Last I heard, she was married again a few years ago. Additional weirdness is she's the one who told me about all this. Her ex from high school. Because after a bit of time, we wound up talking again, in part because we went to the same college and ran into each other a lot. And she at least broke up with a friend she dumped me for. We never got back together, but sadly I probably would have at least part of the time if she'd shown interest. She had a weird habit of introducing her boyfriends to me though, like she was seeking my approval. I crashed with her and her first husband 1 or 2 times. Met the guy she cheated with, drove with just her while she was married a few hundred miles to a mutual friend's wedding. Nothing happened. Hung out with her and the second husband a couple times. Eventually I lost contact. I think it was probably for the best. In retrospect, it was weird. I was weird at the time too. Story 23. New Year's. About 10 years ago, my girlfriend and I had moved into a new apartment. We didn't think we were getting the keys on time, so we had other plans, but when we did, we decided to have an impromptu party. It was a pretty chill vibe. No one was drinking to excess, and I'm coming and going from the kitchen. I was making fresh pretzels, probably some oven chips, pizza, generally being a hostess, which is what I like to do at parties. Most of our friends are other couples. It was a very jumpers and jeans, drama-free party. At some point, some friends arrived from the party we were originally meant to go to. I say hi, barely get anyone's names, make some drinks, show someone where the toilet is, where they can smoke, where coats go, etc. I return to my kitchen to find a straight couple that has just arrived with their friends in the middle of a hushed argument. I do whatever it is I need to do, then ducked out again. This continued for hours. I kept going to take something out of the oven, get glasses, do whatever and get 2 or 3 minutes of this couple's argument. This was compounded by it being a new kitchen because my partner doesn't cook and she'd taken it on herself to unpack all my utensils and kitchen stuff the previous day. So I'd be checking the cupboard next to these people I did not know for something that might not be there. Everything is in the totally wrong place. She doesn't know what a garlic press is, let alone where she put it. It was incredibly awkward. Obviously, I still listened in a bit. You couldn't not, right? Anyway, this girl had 100% broken up with this guy. She had made the decision. She's even told him, and he doesn't seem to, agree. He was basically explaining in length how she isn't being logical and how they should stay together. Because of things like living together is cheaper and my parents like you. To be clear, he wasn't saying, but I love you. He was just trying to debate her back into a relationship. And New Year's in my kitchen when I was trying to cook. They did not kiss at midnight. He left shortly after the bells. The girl apologized a bunch after he left, then had intimacy with one of our friends in the bath, which, while is just as inconsiderate, I can at least support. Story 24. Not another couple's, but my own. My ex-husband and I got married in 2020 when he was 30 and I was 27. We'd been together 7 years at that point. He's in our state's National Guard and was put on active duty during 2020 and had to live close to base about an hour and a half away from home. So he'd come home occasionally on the weekend. But even as 2020 was calming down, he'd kept getting put on more orders. Eventually being sent to base 4 hours away in summer 2022. He'd still come home, maybe once a month. We were talking about me going up, but it never went anywhere. When I finally was like, I'm just going to go up. In October, he suddenly was getting deployed to a West African country for an Ebola breakout, but got held back in Germany for a tooth infection. Only, during the time he was supposedly in Germany, I was getting weird charges on my credit card for things around the base. I thought his card, as an authorized user, was stolen, but the bank said most of the charges were clear. He was talking to me like he'd be home for Christmas, but the week of, his flight was delayed. This is when the family started to get suspicious, as we have other military members that knew that something wasn't right. The week between Christmas and New Year's, his best friends D, girlfriend A, discovered this other girl, SM, commenting on my ex's FB picture. Curious because SM had the same name as A's friend from high school, I looked at her page to see pictures of them together. From that day on, my ex was not in Germany. I was able to get a hold of someone on base that confirmed that he never left the state, let alone the country. He was still working at the base and had started renting a house with SM and her 3 kids. Those mysterious charges on my credit card were me funding his second life. After getting caught, he filed for divorce and I wanted him to because I wanted to see when he claimed the start date of separation, which he said was summer 2022. But I had months of texts from him during that time acting like we were together, talking about starting a family when he came home, etc., etc. It wasn't just lying to me. His best friend and family all thought he was in Germany, even his dad and sisters. I did make a formal complaint to his higher-ups about using his military orders to hide his affairs. There wasn't much they could do, but it is on his record. The contact I made in that base, my ex had introduced his mistress as his wife to the base's commanding officer at the base Christmas party. My contact was friends with said commander and said she made him aware of it, which he wasn't too happy about. It's been over a year now. Still hurts, but I'm glad to be rid of him. I lost between 30 to 20 pounds, going from a 8 to 10 to a 4 to 6 pant size. Healthier than ever, and I don't get migraines anymore either. Literally, I dropped the weight of my life and the headache. Never had kids together, so I'm completely free of him, which is good. I sent the priest who married us my interview portion of the paperwork to appeal for an annulment of the marriage. He's confident that I will receive it. Honestly, the only part that is bad is dating again. Last time I was dating was college, and now everyone and everything is so different, and people play weird games. Story 25. It was my friend's birthday party, and her boyfriend at the time kept telling her all night that he had a surprise for her. even telling us, her friends and her parents and family. She was understandably very excited as she expected maybe a cool trip or a really nice gift. Also, she's kind of rich and invited him to very luxury trips and always gave him really nice gifts. They'd been saving up for a while and thought he wanted to give her a treat. Well, he dumped her right as the party finished, in front of everyone. That schmuck literally said, "Hey, here's your surprise. I'm breaking up with you." It was painful to watch. So crazy and ridiculous. Her mom kicked him out. He really expected us all to laugh as if he was a kid prankster saying some lies in a high school class and not a pathetic adult alpha male wannabe. That was all self-proclaimed alpha males, to be honest. Humiliating his girlfriend of 3 years. We all knew he was stupid, but definitely not that much of a schmuck. Now we laugh at that memory as, well, it was a really nice gift to get rid of him so easily. He was kind of a leech. Even telling her that he planned on breaking up some months before but wanted to wait to the party because her parents gifted them all paid vacation for her birthday and he couldn't miss it. It definitely felt crazy as hell seeing that in person. I probably will never forget it. People have been incorrectly accused of cheating. What was your partner's proof? I was the one doing the accusing for what seemed like a very good reason. A good friend of mine informed me that my wife was having an affair with a guy from her work. His proof is that my wife, who was his wife's best friend, had told her in confidence that she was seeing this guy at work. I then did something I swore I'd never do and took a look at her phone messages, where I saw a whole bunch of messages between her and another friend from her work discussing the entire thing. I confronted her and she explained how it was actually a test for the first friend as she suspected that the friend in question was gossiping about her to my wife's ex-husband and father of her child. She just neglected to tell me about her genius plan she cooked up with her friend. Turns out her friend was gossiping about her. The problem being that now this fake secret actually made its way around town. I had a conversation with the alleged affair guy and told him he better tell his wife outright that this had happened. The stupid game nearly cost 2 marriages, mine and the other guy's, because of rumors. And ended a friendship as now my wife and the secret teller were now enemies. It means that I now didn't get to hang out with her husband. It caused me to look at my wife in a totally different light, as she didn't think that there was anything wrong with the plan and how it was all her, now ex-friend's fault in the first place for telling her husband. We're no longer together. Her plan sounds like a bad sitcom plot. Story 2. I got accused of some uncomfortable feelings from my then girlfriend and now wife. She had just gone out of a relationship where the previous dude had been engaged to 2 women at once and decided that when he was ready to move, he was taking the other one and not my wife. It seriously messed up her mental state a bit. To be clear, she let me know from the outset that she had trust issues because of this, and I could back out if that's too much. I didn't, of course. Anyway, she came over one day and before I got a call from my mom, which ended up being a longer call than I wanted, she flips out because it was 8 p.m. My mom lives in a different time zone, and who talks to their mom that late? She looked at my phone, which I happily provided, and looked at the number. Because my mom uses landlines, it was easy to find the number. She calmed down. Had a couple other small incidents, but the moment that you found out I enjoyed playing Dungeons and Dragons and board games seemed to the moment the accusations ended. Pop culture, video games, anime, and otherwise any other kinds of nerds generally do not have time to cheat. That would otherwise go into the other activities they enjoy. Also, we're happy that at least one person likes to sleep with us, and we're not messing that up. To be fair, she's not wrong. Why would we give up on that one person who tolerated us? Story 3. Okay, this one is crazy. So in college, I had this girlfriend that I really liked. It was something I didn't mind settling down with. I was kinda in love. Now I've always worked at restaurants and bars, so meeting people to be with wasn't ever hard. And if you worked in the industry, you know that having casual intimacy with some of your coworkers is really common. My girlfriend knew about this, and she knew that once we became exclusive, I stopped doing this. 1 month life got in the way and we stopped having intimacy for like 2 weeks, and with my high libido, I was stressed and angry. With this, a perfect storm started to brew. Once me and her were finally able to meet and have intimacy, my phone got a message about how one of my recent partners was tested for STDs and came back positive, and that I should get tested. Now at that point, I'd been dating this girl for like almost a year, and when she read that message, she freaked out and started screaming at me. She broke up with me on the spot and didn't give me a chance to explain. 3 months later, I started catching up with my high school sweetheart and I was telling her about the story, and she laughs and said, "Oh, sorry, I entered your name and phone number in a site that tells partners about potential STDs in an anonymous way." At that point, my ex-girlfriend had moved on and had another boyfriend, so it was too late for me to get her back. And I stopped talking to my high school sweetheart because of that. Jeez, sounds like the sweetheart was still sweet on him and trying to free him up for herself. Story 4. My ex was a super jealous Marine. His best friend came out to visit and we very much hit it off. He was really smart and a reader and could talk about deep social and philosophical issues, which is totally my jam. Well, my ex would take these midday 4-hour naps and take it as per usual. His friend and I hung out and talked while he slept. Mind you, I was 9 months pregnant at this time. When he woke up, he was convinced that we had been intimate. It took no evidence whatsoever, just that he had gone to sleep and woke up and we must have taken advantage of the situation. Well, as things would turn out, his friend and I laughed it off, because he must have been joking. Nope. For the entirety of our marriage, he was convinced his friend and I were having this steamy love affair. It was comical. He tried to find evidence in everything. We are thankfully divorced now, and his friend is one of my very best friends. Still haven't slept with him. Amazing how women and men can be friends without having intimacy. It's incredibly juvenile to think otherwise. It's a reflection of your own intentions in the world. Story 5. My ex-wife accused me of cheating all the time. The thing is, I never did and I never wanted to. Here's a story about how bad it was. I was at work and my wife called. She told me that someone who knew me told someone who knew my wife that on the previous Wednesday, I was seen having lunch with a beautiful young woman. I allegedly fawned all over this woman, and when we left, I kissed her and told her I loved her. Then we got in separate cars and drove away. My wife was enraged. I was dumbfounded. There was no way I did this, but how do I prove something that never happened? I was miserable the rest of the day. Then, just before leaving work, I realized a way to prove my innocence. I called my wife. This is what I told her. I have to come clean. I did in fact have lunch with a beautiful woman last Wednesday. I can't deny it any longer. I kissed her and I told her I love her. I admit that I've been having intimacy with her. Now, before you get more emotional than you already are, I need to ask you a question. What did you do for lunch last Wednesday? You see, I got in trouble with my wife for having an affair with my wife. She had met me for lunch. Let me tell you, her reaction was priceless. It was one of those rare times in our marriage where, for about 2 weeks, I was treated like a god. How did someone forget they were with someone and believe that person was with someone else? Story 6. On the other hand, I've been incorrectly accused of being the other woman. The most recent one was an ex-coworker and I became pretty good work buddies. We're video game nerds, so I would text him about video game stuff after work hours. His wife, who I found out was a super jealous type, accused him of cheating on her with me. She came to the office one day to bring him lunch just to meet me. She didn't say anything to my face and was nice, but it was a weird interaction. The next day, he told me they fought about me sleeping with him. None of it was true. They fought so much about me that I stopped texting him after work. During work, I only texted him about work stuff. It got to the point where she didn't care about the context, just that I was texting him. I tried to be friends with her to help ease her suspicions. Didn't help. I didn't do anything wrong. He didn't do anything wrong. She's just crazy and has major trust issues. Apparently, she's always been this way, so he doesn't have many friends. He wanted to divorce her, but stayed for the children. So yeah, her proof was that I texted him about video games we both play, so I must be sleeping with him, because why else would I be texting about the new video game coming out if I wasn't having intimacy with him? Story 7. So can I comment as the one who has done the incorrect accusation? Though I never actually accuse him, I believe to my core my partner would never cheat on me. I just want to preface this by saying I have some relationship trauma from being cheated on in the past. And I also have borderline personality disorder, so sometimes I can get inadvertently triggered by my partner's actions, and then spiral into a BPD episode. It's a nightmare. I think because I've been in therapy for over a year, and at times it was very intensive, 3 times a week, I've got a pretty good handle on my BPD. I overcommunicate with my partner to work through my emotions and never flat out accuse him. Just a few things that have triggered me. He angled his phone away from me. The girl at a store we frequent is pretty, so I worked up this incredibly delusional scenario where he had a crush on her and went to the store solely because he has a crush on her. This was a very specific BPD episode, which I was able to work through on my own and only talked to him about it after the fact when I had calmed down. As far as my body or mind was concerned though, it was real. My pressure went up, my heart started pounding, I got hot and my stomach dropped and I was trembling with fear from this ridiculously delusional scenario. After I had calmed down and we were talking about it, we both found it a bit amusing. Just a tiny bit though. Lol. I saw a couple heart emojis at a glance in an SMS thread. He closes his phone the moment I sit on the couch beside him. Every single time, as embarrassing and humiliating and vulnerable as it is, I simply tell him how I'm feeling. I'm feeling really triggered because of that. I don't actually think you're cheating, but it's like the BPD part of my brain is trying to convince me you're cheating. I'm really sorry. I know it's the irrational fight or flight BPD part of my brain kicking in and trying to convince me of my amazing partner of doing horrible things. It's emotionally and mentally exhausting, and I wish I could just wake up tomorrow with a normal brain. I'm commenting in the hopes that if someone else who experiences or feels what I do and is incorrectly accusing their partner can maybe see there are other ways to go about it. It's okay to have insecurity. It's okay to have trauma. You can work through it in a healthy and constructive way. The feelings itself aren't the problem. The way we incorrectly handle them is the problem. But this doesn't apply to the cheating schmucks projecting the problems onto their partner. Story 8. Finally, I have a story. But it wasn't my partner. It was my friend's partner. I had been friends with a guy named Mike, fake name, for a couple of years before he met his girlfriend. Let's call her Sally. Sally had a lot of jealousy issues and really didn't like Mike hanging out with a female friend. Even if I was with my husband or she was with him, Mike was really infatuated with her and didn't create any boundaries. Mike wanted to refresh his apartment and buy some furniture. He invited me along as I have a discount card he can use to get a sweet deal. We go to the retail store, pick up the furniture. He drops me off and goes along his merry way. Sally accused him of cheating with me that night. Another occasion a few weeks later, I invited Mike to a work event. The company held a snowboarding day for employees plus guests. Mike and I usually hit the slopes a few times each winter, so naturally I asked him to be my guest. We drive up together, spend the day in the slopes, have a beer, then he drives me home. Later that night, Sally blew up at him, saying she isn't comfortable with him being alone with me. A few weeks later, Mike and I met up to attend a sports event. At this time, my husband was gone for a few months on a work trip, so I reached out to Mike as I knew he would enjoy the free tickets I held to this event. We attend the sports game, say our goodbyes, and head our separate ways. That evening, Sally sat Mike down with an ultimatum. She said there's evidence she found of Mike cheating on her with me, and me cheating on my husband with him. Keep in mind, my husband and Mike are best friends, who talk constantly. Mike asked her what her evidence was. She pointed to texts. The texts of me asking if he would like to, number 1, buy furniture on my discount, number 2, attend a free snowboarding day, and number 3, attend a free sports game. She said by hanging out and texting, he's obviously cheating on her. She told him it's either her or me. He chose her. Our friendship stopped existing after that, and even though he finally threw her to the curb, our relationship has never recovered. I'm still confused how someone can be so jealous over their partner hanging with the opposite gender. Story 9. My ex-wife's sister had convinced her that I was sleeping with a friend because I would be seen walking my friend from a shared class to the computer club meetings every Wednesday. She then convinced my ex-wife that the only way to get even would be to cheat on me. She ended up getting with a few guys and had been cheating for a fair bit of time. Once my wife decided to leave me, I was still unaware of the cheating. The sister was consoling me and suggesting that I should move on. I told her that I was going to wait for my ex-wife to get over whatever was bothering her because she had wanted to leave in the past but kept coming back after some time. Yes, I was an idiot. I'd still pay the bills and clean up every now and again when my ex took her boy out or to see the family. After a couple months or so of these talks, her sister then told me she had been cheating and that it's been going on for a while. I was super angry and called my ex to confirm. I was really shaken up because we were trying to make it work for our boy. Nonetheless, my ex then broke the news that her sister was telling her that I'd been cheating and encouraged her to get back at me. Flash forward a few more months from that fallout, and her sister started to reach out and was coming over to hang out. Started with that statement of, we're still family, and progressed into, you deserve better, and so on. We started sleeping with one another, and honestly, back then it was just meant to be revenge on my ex-wife, but it turned into a pretty regrettable experience. One that served to complicate the dynamic between me and my ex when trying to be respectful and courteous to one another for the sake of our boy. It's been years now, and we found our stride. Story 10. Oh, I have a good one for this. When I was in college, I had a boyfriend from back home that lived about an hour away. He wasn't super happy with me going to college. He was excessively controlling and manipulative, and was always suspicious of who I was hanging out or studying with, but I constantly invited him down to the campus and he never wanted to come. This resulted in me spending every weekend driving an hour north to stay with him. On Halloween weekend, he finally agreed to come down to see me. I think it was because my friends wanted to go to this party and I was invited, but he didn't want me to go, so he figured he'd come distract me for the night. I was staying at a friend's house as a temporary living situation, and the entrance to her duplex is behind the front of the house, so it's very hard to see. I told my boyfriend to call me when he was close to the address so I could walk out to the street to direct him down the driveway. He texted me to say he was approaching, so I waited for the call but never got one. Finally, I went outside. I had terrible cell service in this area, so as soon as I went outside, I saw 5 missed calls from him and a couple angry voicemails because he couldn't find the house I was staying in. I walked out to the street and called him back immediately. He started going off on me that he had heard everything I said and couldn't believe I would do this. Obviously, I was extremely confused. I see his car headlights turn about a block down from where I'm standing, so I'm waving my arms to get his attention while asking on the phone what he's talking about. Turns out that the house he had parked in front of was having some sort of small gathering in their backyard behind a privacy fence. He swore he could hear my voice back there, telling some guy how I hated being with my boyfriend but can't find a good way to dump him, and that he heard people addressing me by name. I was stunned. I tried to reason how that made no sense as he had literally watched me walk out of the house up the block and up to the sidewalk to get his attention. I asked how I possibly could have been at that house down the street, then at this one 30 seconds later. He claimed I had seen his calls, hopped over the fence on the other side, and ran up the street to call him back. I didn't know what to say as the claim was so ridiculous and physically impossible. Anyways, we spent the entire night there arguing and he was screaming at me so loud until I broke down and cried so hard. When I look back on that relationship, I know I should have ended it right then and there, but unfortunately we stayed together for about 6 more months. Story 11. This is a little convoluted, but my job as an industrial electrician required to carry a pager. I would get a page and often needed to find a payphone in a very rural Pacific Northwest USA. At the same time, many places that had payphones were switching from major carriers like GTE or Verizon or Bell to off-brand suppliers that would kick back more money for allowing the pay kiosk in the property. The problem was, the off-brand didn't have their own operator services and such calls were routed to major cities 150 miles away. And this is how the call posted in the billing. If I was in Washington State, it would go 150 miles away to Spokane. If I was south, it might go to Portland. Both my ex and my employer got together and decided I had women stashed away in the cities. I would be down in the compressor room of an Apple processor up to my ears in noise, oil, and leaky ammonia, and they decided I was off doing the horizontal bebop. They actually did an intervention-type confrontation with me. I was A, stunned, B, unable to explain why the billing showed the call in a different place. A friend of mine with GTA at the time explained it to me and said there's a little disclaimer in these off-service phone booths, saying service may show different billing codes. Explaining this is like a blacksmith at the turn-off of the 1900s trying to understand automobile impact. You no longer have pagers, very few phone booths, or operators as such, but it is the equivalent of somebody combing through your cell phone looking for incriminating evidence. I did use this as a springboard to a far better work career and relationship. Story 12. My ex always accused me of cheating whenever my bus ran a little late. I'm coming home from a 10-hour shift, which does not include the 1-hour travel to and from, so I was away for 12 hours. To him, accusing me and crying, all because I was 5 to 10 minutes late and didn't text to let him know. He also would break down if I didn't say I love you 30 times a day. I broke up with him after his Johnson turned big, angry, and purple, and the first thing he said to me when I got to the hospital was, "I didn't cheat." And just to let you guys know, I tested myself after and didn't have an STD. We hadn't been sleeping together much at that point due to the fact I was in pain from my now diagnosed autoimmune disease, to which he didn't believe I was ill. And when I wasn't in pain, he was begging and crying for intimacy, which was an instant turn-off. To top it off, in the breakup novel he wrote to me, he called me Jay, which my name doesn't start with, but his best friend, who was a street worker, started with a J. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 13. It was a very brief relationship with little substance, but the story still makes me laugh. On Halloween night, I sent my, at the time, boyfriend a Snapchat of me and my openly non-straight friend. We had met on multiple occasions. He immediately got all sulky and quiet, then proceeded to essentially ghost me. I tried texting him over the next week, trying to understand what happened, but quickly realized it was not worth trying to salvage the relationship. I finally ended up getting him on the phone about a week later to chat. The call was civil, but definitely awkward. After a few minutes of small talk, I asked, "So what happened? Why did you go ghost?" All he said was, "Well, you cheated on me. You literally sent me a picture of it." I couldn't help but laugh. I explained to him that it was my non-straight friend, but he adamantly refused that it was him and that it was a random guy. I even texted my friend and asked if he remembered me taking a selfie with him at the party, and he said yes. I screenshotted the convo and sent it to my ex. Only then did he believe me. The call wrapped up and we parted ways. I continued to text my non-straight friend about the call with my ex, and he then told me that he had seen my ex that day after the Halloween party at another party, and my ex had been with a random girl there. So he falsely assumed I cheated on him, then immediately went on to cheat on me out of retaliation. Definitely dodged in that one. Story 14. I got a new job, and as I changed from part-time to full-time, my income increased drastically. Had, at the time, more than 15 years of experience in my field, so the pay was justified. The rise was his proof because obviously no one would pay an assistant to the director an adequate sum if there was not any catch involved. I had to work overtime when my colleague fell ill for months and working longer than usual. Though he knew about the situation, was his proof. I refused to break up all my friendships to spend my time with only him, because if I was not messing with other people, I would not mind excluding them from my life. I had a 6-hour choir rehearsal the weekend before a concert. He knew in advance, even sent him pics of all the cakes that were brought during the break. We would always rehearse for some hours, eat together, and continue singing afterwards. But as I could not answer his messages after the break, because obviously we all would mute our phones, the only plausible explanation was that I was suddenly somewhere else with someone else and cheating. That guy really was a piece of work. There was nothing that he did not regard as cheating. Going grocery shopping without the kids? Cheating. Having one-on-one vocal training with a choir leader? 60s, female. Cheating. Meeting friends? Cheating. Being invited to a birthday party? Cheating. Visiting a wedding with my kids? Cheating. Found out when I finally broke up with him that he was projecting all the time. He even planned to visit the same festival with his side piece and me at the same time. I'm still baffled how he would have tried to avoid her and me actually not noticing anything. Had an interesting conversation with her when I found out that we're friends now. That angered him off the most. Story 15. Nothing. Context, I just had a male best friend that wasn't hiding his attraction to me. I'd never said yes to him, but I never specifically said no either. I should have, but didn't. There wasn't any flirting either. Yes, I know I said he didn't hide his attraction, but it wasn't in the context of flirting. This dude wasn't particularly in my life in the 5 years I was with my ex. A hello here and there, never more. Besides, I didn't sleep with him before meeting my now ex. During the relationship, nor did it happen afterwards either. I'm not interested in him. The accusation. I was in the area where my now ex-best friend and I attended elementary school. My mom had acquired a lot that she was preparing for construction. It's literally in a mound, so there are tons of trees alongside the trail or road that leads to where the house is now sitting. They had to be removed for our electricity provider to install posts and run electric cables. She'd asked for my help with that, so I went. According to my ex, I was actually messing with my best friend. That's solely based on projection. My ex had cheated on every single one of the girlfriends he has had. He still couldn't keep his Johnson in his pants while with me. He was the cheater, not me. But because he knew best friend was attracted to me, and since I'd never explicitly turned the dude down or since he was still a friend of mine, I was necessarily cheating on him. I understand the concern that I never specifically said no, but that's the only proof, if we can call that proof, of my so-called cheating. I never cheated on him. I never cheated on anyone. I don't plan to, and it's not something that I would be comfortable with doing anyway. Story 16. My coworker sent a text to me after we had a get-together with our kids and fellow coworkers, saying I had left the monster sock at her house. Ex assumed this was intimacy slang. It was my kid's sock with a cartoon monster in the ankle. Ex wasn't hearing it. Same coworker. We were out of town for work. This one I do shoulder some blame for what came of it, because I hid the fact that my coworker and I would even be in the same area together, because by this point, I was over being accused of being a cheater even though I hadn't done anything wrong. Looking back, we were at a point where our marriage was already over, and lying or admitting to a spouse is a clear sign it's not going to work. Anyways, we all had dinner at a restaurant with about 20 to 25 of us. Someone took a picture and I was sitting next to the same coworker I was previously accused of cheating with. We were in the same division and each division mostly sat next to each other. Later that night, the same girl had a mental breakdown at the bar we all went to, crying about missing her kids and custody issues she was dealing with. She also drank quite a bit too much. Another coworker and I grabbed an Uber and took her back to sleep it off. She got carsick. I threw my jacket, which she immediately reached into. Had to literally fireman carry this woman back and drop her off with other female coworkers to make sure she got to sleep and didn't have any issues. Ex again didn't want to hear it. The picture alone was the obvious proof she needed to believe I had cheated again. Ex caused such a mess for me on my job that I ended up turning down over $100,000 in bonuses to stay longer, because her actions involved calling all of my superiors to tell them that I was having an affair with said coworker and had proof. She had essentially railroaded my career and stood into the garbage, as my superiors didn't want the drama. She also gave me the ultimatum: stay at the job and divorce, in which she would seek full custody and move with the children, or leave the job and do what's right for my family. My job wasn't very family-friendly, so I left the job 3 months later and moved with her back across the country to try and make things work for my kids' sake. We divorced a year and a half later. She's still crazy. Story 17. We were renting our van out in Turo for a while. One of the last trips, months ago, a customer had left some foundation behind, so I tossed it in one of my other cars while I waited for a response to know if the customer wanted it back. I also told my wife, hey, if you're in the other car and you see a foundation, don't worry, it's the woman who rented the van. Customer said no, she didn't want it and forgot about it for months. Last month, she went to take her daughter to school and the van battery went out. So she started cleaning out our other car with the foundation, and she found it. She also forgot all about the part where I told her who it was months before. So the one time ever I have my company owner, 2 regional managers, my manager, and a sister property manager in one room, and my wife calls up my phone with 3 calls since I was ignoring them. Since I was in the first meeting ever with my company ownership, then she texts me a pic and says, what in the world is this? After my phone alarms for those 2 messages, the owner says, it's okay, we can wait. So I took out my phone and started laughing harder than I'd ever laughed before. All the leadership looked at me like I'm crazy, so I explained and they all laughed too. I went to the Turo app and found months-old messages where I asked the woman if she wanted it back, with brand name and everything. Sent it to my wife and she said, oh yeah, I forgot. It's hilarious to me because my wife is not a jealous woman. Story 18. I had to take a day off from work and drive across the state for some medical tests that my insurance would only cover in a very specific location. It took about 4 hours to drive there and a couple hours for the test to be done. And afterwards, I got food with an old female friend, M, that had moved there. Right after eating, I did the 4-hour drive back home. Getting ready for bed that night, my girlfriend says, hey, what are those in your back? I look in the mirror and on both shoulder blades, the skin is red and lightly brushed. Girlfriend starts screaming at me as to why I have hickeys on my shoulder blades. I'm much more confused than her, and I can only say maybe while I was driving, I was seated wrong, causing wear and tear again at those locations, or that maybe during the testing, pressure was placed on them. Not great solutions, I know. I was trying to be as reasonable as possible. She starts screaming at me to admit I cheated on her with said friend M. I'm honest with her still that I'm unsure where they came from. But point out I don't think kissing on people's shoulder blades to the point of hickeys is a thing. The conversation devolves from there, with me trying to point out how if I was in this hypothetical frantic love rush scenario, where hickeys are being doled out, I should have them in more places than my shoulder blades, and her just screaming at me to admit it. Relationship lasted another week after I realized she was cheating on me when she forgot to turn her Find My Friends off. Story 19. I used to have my location shared on Snapchat with my friends. I work nights as a first responder, so I go to bed around 8 a.m. and I knock out hard after a shift. Did my usual routine. Went home, showered, texted my girl for a little, then went to bed. Important to note, my girl lives about 5 minutes away from me in the same city. I guess while I was driving home from work, Snapchat GPS connected to a cell tower nearby and placed my location at an address about 1 mile away. My girlfriend was looking at Snap Maps and saw my Bitmoji character placed at a different address. When I said I was going to bed, I'll give her credit, this does look pretty bad. She FaceTimed me at 4 p.m. when I usually wake up, which was already weird. Says, hey, good morning. So what were you doing at XXX this morning? Me, clearly confused, asked her what she meant. She told me my location and showed me some houses at this address. I shut that down quickly. Fortunately, I used a Fitbit to track my sleep, which showed I went to sleep when I said that I did, and it showed my location, which was my address. I still bring it up once in a while just to mess with. Story 20. Oh, I have a long list of situations where my ex used to accuse me of cheating. Every week it was something new. I don't think it was projection per se, more so he was very insecure and had a lot of issues. But the time that sticks out to me the most was when we had gone to eat breakfast one day before classes, and I became very sick with some sort of stomach bug, so I had a fever and was vomiting all over the place. I had ordered a fruit parfait, but obviously couldn't eat it, so I took it to go. Left the restaurant and scheduled a doctor's appointment. I couldn't be seen by the doctor for a few hours and didn't want to drive all the way back home. I lived far, so I just parked at the doctor's office and laid on my backseat in agony for those few hours. Meanwhile, my yogurt parfait that the restaurant had put in a cardboard to-go box was melting and spilling a little bit on my front passenger seat. I didn't care about the mess. It was very small at the time because I was, of course, not feeling well, so I was going to deal with it later. Fast forward, I see the doctor, get prescribed some nausea medication, and go home. Mind you, never once checked on me through text or anything the rest of the day. The next day, I feel much better, and after classes, I pick him up so that we can hang out. He's sitting in the front seat and notices the dried specks of yesterday's yogurt on it and immediately starts to act weird and basically get an attitude with me. Side note, he had a really bad car, so we always used mine, meaning I drove us everywhere. So he would always leave his stuff and trash in the passenger side door, so everything in there was from him. He suddenly looks in the passenger side door compartment and grabs a balled up napkin, which was obviously his because no one else sat in that seat, and started inspecting it and the dried yogurt together. He basically accused me of lying about being sick so that I could ditch him and have a fun time with another guy in my car, and that the dried yogurt stains and dirty napkins were proof that I had forgotten to dispose of. I tried explaining to him the situation, that it was the yogurt from our breakfast the day before, and that I had been in bed the entire time after the doctor's visit, but he didn't believe me. I broke up with him shortly after. Story 21. My girl had no evidence, but she was absolutely sure one time, 3 years previous when I was getting lunch with a friend of hers, I must have been with said friend. Despite no evidence of this and the adamant testimony from both of us that we did not in fact hook up, we talked about work and trying to get our careers off the ground. This argument would come up every 6 months or so when she was drunk, and she'd start insisting I must have hooked up with her friend because I was with her for an hour and a half in a busy open-air market where there's lots of places where we could have a clandestine affair. Eventually, I refused to even participate in these conversations as they were not coming from any place grounded in any kind of logic, which only seemed to drive her to further infuriation. So eventually I had it. There were 100 other reasons and I left her. Technically, I let her leave me, which she did every other week or so, and this time I just called her bluff. She was very surprised Pikachu about it, but we were basically just arguing all the time and I'd realized I was letting her isolate me from my friends. Anyway, while she's screaming into the phone about how I'm a monster and never going to do as well as her and blah blah blah, I honestly stopped listening. She starts going off about all the extra relational intimacy she's been having and how much better everyone was than me and I'm a terrible lover, which threw the frequent accusations of infidelity into stark relief. So remember kids, if it looks like projection, it almost always is. For the record, I was 100% monogamous the entire time I was in that dynamic. Amusingly, I'm in a polyamorous dynamic now, and it's easily the healthiest, most communicative, and consent-focused relationship I've ever been in. Story 22. Her friend told her I did. That's all. Her friend decided something I did was suspicious, and she relayed I had cheated. It took a long time to shake, but one day my brother-in-law's ex-girlfriend, let's call her Jay, came over to talk about moving into our basement. They got to talking, we were all hammered. She tells my wife, after my wife brought up the cheating thing, that I definitely would never cheat. My wife asks how she can know for sure, and she comes out with a story. She and my bro-in-law had come over years ago and were arguing. She decided to stay the night and he left angry. My wife had to work and went to sleep early, so I grabbed fresh sheets from the basement suite and made the bed for her. I left to get a pillow, and when I came back, she was completely bare on the bed. She said I told her I loved my wife and wouldn't be interested and left. Important note to the story, I was blackout hammered the entire time. When he had left, she and I had taken a bunch of drinks and had a cry about her breaking up with him, blah blah. I don't know why my wife trusted my intoxicated actions and the story of a person we hadn't spent time with in years more than me, but it worked. She started trusting me more after, and the problem hasn't returned. We even had some poly relationships after, so I don't know how to explain her distrust, really. Story 23. I just saw the BuzzFeed article in this and knew I had a peach of a story to tell. My boyfriend of 2 years and I weren't doing well, and I was heading out of town, so I told him he could stay or go while I was gone. At that point, I didn't care. I leave the next morning and drive 3 hours to where my father was having open heart surgery. I was at the hospital the entire time during visiting hours or at the Airbnb close by. The night nurse, while my father was in ICU, gave me his unit cell number to check in on my dad through the night, which I did. After my dad was moved out of the ICU, I drove home because I had to work that night. Now this part is important. It has been snowing, I have arthritis in my knees and hips, and I don't have cruise control in my car. So when I arrived home to find said boyfriend, there I was, limping from my right knee and hip, hurting after the drive. I proceeded to get dressed and get ready for work and leave for the night. Apparently, my limp and John in my phone was evidence that I had cheated. And to prove that, he stole the drawers I had changed out of from the laundry. Cut to a month later and he gets blackout hammered and cheats on me with the most disgusting human imaginable. We broke up and he decided to send my drawers as well as hair from my brush to some sketchy lab. Then he tells me he didn't cheat. He was taken advantage by this woman while blacked out. Knowing this vile creature is horrid enough to possibly do that, I believe him and take him back. A year later, I'm getting ready for work and the idiot boyfriend is arguing with me, brings up the situation with John again and says he has DNA evidence to prove it. I tossed him out of the house. He later would claim he didn't send the drawers off. He did, but it came back negative for foreign DNA. It came back positive, but he didn't believe it. It came back inconclusive, etc. He later told everyone I was neglectful of my kids and it was them he missed, not me. All the while stalking me, even going so far as to get a job at my place of employment, forcing me to leave sooner than I'd planned. All of our friends were confused and torn because I was trying to keep cordial at first and polite. By the time I realized I needed to defend myself, it was too late. It sounded false. Later, he showed his true colors to everyone, and I really saw who my real friends were. Most of them were friends of mine that became mutual while we dated. A year later, I found out from his former best friend, an old friend of mine as well, that he wasn't taken advantage of. He'd admitted to cheating on me that night of his birthday. He's completely out of my life now, thankfully, and he doesn't even have the friends he tried to steal away with bogus lies. I mean, he accused me of cheating on him with books, too. Because I'm a bookworm and always had been, it was cheating. Couples who have broken up because of a third person that did not involve cheating. What happened? Didn't involve any actual cheating. My boyfriend at the time had to go to another state to have surgery on his spine. I was supposed to come within a couple of months to join him once he was in recovery. In the meantime, I was making some money to help with the move. I called up a friend named Matt to hang out and see if he could help me pick up a little grass to help with my nausea. Total platonic friend. We had been friends for a couple years but didn't hang out often. He came by with his roommate, played some Magic the Gathering with me and my brother, and he then took me to hang out with his other friends for about an hour. We watched some anime. There were a lot of us there. He and I were never alone, even in the car. Smoked a little and I bought a small bag from his friend. It was a nice night. He dropped me off relatively early and life was good. Until his mean, extremely jealous fiancée saw our text messages saying that he was coming to pick me up for the night. She was a known vindictive witch who hated me for no discernible reason. Was always super nasty to me, but I hardly ever saw her, so I ignored it. Well, she went behind both of our backs and contacted my boyfriend fresh out of surgery to tell him that I was sleeping with her fiancé. My boyfriend called me, yelled at me, told me he didn't believe me after the girl exposed the truth, and ghosted me. I immediately sent her an FB message that essentially said, "I don't even know you. Why would you tell my boyfriend that I'm sleeping with Matt when I wasn't even alone with him?" She responded with, "Oh, I didn't even ask Matt. Glad you didn't do anything." Then I asked her to call my boyfriend back and tell him the truth, but she ignored me and sent me a smiley face before blocking me. I told Matt and he apologized profusely. He was kind of a doormat to her. Sadly, she got to keep her fiancé, who was way too good for her. Matt was a good dude, and they got married. Well, I lost a long-term boyfriend that I was very much in love with at the time due to no fault of my own. It worked out in the end since I love my current husband with all my heart, but I'm still mad at that nasty woman for doing that to me. She just wanted to hurt me and I still have no idea why. I think she was one of those girls who thought all skinny girls deserved to be punished because she was obese, like a female with an incel mentality. I say that because the very first thing she ever said to me the day I met her was, "Shut up, skinny woman. Skinny women don't know anything." Also, fun fact, I was only skinny after having lost a large sum of weight, and I had actually been overweight my whole life up until then. Kitty, even if you weren't morbidly obese, you'd still be rotten on the inside. I hope Matt does better someday because he very easily could. If he will believe someone's word over hers with zero corroborating evidence, he's not worth it. Story 2. No cheating, but it really seemed like she was in love with her best friend. She bent over backwards for this woman, constantly. And yet every time she'd talk about her to me, it never seemed to be anything remotely positive. I never could understand why she was persisting with their friendship. Plus, always bad-mouthing whoever her friend was dating. Some may have deserved it, but it started to feel like a pattern. Like she was jealous. I never asked or accused any of this, but 6 months in, it should have been sooner, it was finally crystal clear to me I wasn't going to get anywhere near the level of effort I was giving, or even half of the output she was putting into this girl. Called it off and really felt quite good to end it. Epilogue. About 4 or 5 months ago, 2 years after I ended things and not a word to each other since, I walked into a banh mi shop to place an order. Went to wait outside since it was busy, glanced up and at a table outside, I noticed her friend, then a familiar blonde ponytail with her back to me. Not at all interested in any interaction, even accidental. I went back into the shop, picked up my sandwich, walked a different way out of the shop to avoid passing them. Later that night at the pub, I got a private phone call. Ignore. Call again a few minutes later. Ignore. Get a voicemail. It's the friend saying to leave the ex alone or she'd have to go to the police. I was confused, but really couldn't do anything but laugh it off and move on with my day. What in the world, man? What a weird turn of events. Frankly, they deserve each other. Story 3. She was my best friend and worked with my fiancé at the time, so she was pretty close to both of us. We were going through a rough patch, and I thought I could vent in trust and in confidence to my best friend, but instead she took my words and twisted them, and regurgitated the version of my event to my fiancé, in turn making the problems worse and fester, and would do the same thing with his vents to her, giving me the twisted version of what was supposed to be his in confidence vent to a friend. Towards the end, we took a 1-week-long trip of solitude and reflection where we went to camping in the middle of nowhere with no distractions, no technology for a week to talk and discuss our life together. It was during that week of discussing what had been going on recently that it came out that she was giving him a very different version of what I was venting to her about, and vice versa to me, which was causing more problems between us. We chalked it up to her own bad track record of relationships. Misery loves company, after all. During that week, she started a new job at a different company. So I ended up ghosting her and blocking her number, and my fiancé didn't have to see her at work anymore, so it was pretty easy and effective to fully cut her out of our lives. I didn't need an explanation on why she was doing what she was doing, and frankly, I didn't owe her any explanation on ending the friendship based on what she was doing. Our relationship still broke down because it was irreparable at that point, but I'd never experienced such underhanded friendship in my whole life as that one. Turns out he was cheating, just not with her. And apparently one of the contentions was that he was upset that she wouldn't sleep with him despite knowing the whole time that he was cheating on me. Story 4. Every guy she has ever dated had cheated on her. Her grandfather cheated on her grandmother, and her father cheated on her mother. This one while we were together. As a result, she was incredibly insecure and made me cut out all my female friends. Started to feel like I was walking on eggshells around any woman, including cashiers at the supermarket, even when I was alone. She got mad about one of my neighbors being friendly to me a couple of times. Not like in a secret side conversation. While my neighbors, a couple, my ex and I were all in a group chat. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. We had a fight about it. I took a week away, talked to friends, family, and my therapist, and realized I'd been developing secondary trauma from it all and ended it. Still loved her, but it was messing me up. I found out through the grapevine that she was eventually diagnosed with PTSD. For all the cheating and a history of mistreatment, too. Was getting professional help, and she's with a new guy. Hopefully she's doing okay. Story 5. She had a psycho mother who would poke her head into every aspect of her relationship. At one point, her mom was going to work and watching me in the security cameras from the time I woke up until I went to work or bed. I only found out later it was so when I left, she would bring my girlfriend at the time, ex, over to try and force me out of the situation. She was mistreating, unkempt, unemployed, but easily controlled by her mom to do anything she wanted. He also was or is known for selling her pictures for cash. The tipping point was when her mom forcibly moved back into the house she was no longer paying for, then began stealing groceries, money, and medical camp to take to her other daughter, an unemployed high school dropout with 3 kids. Called her mom out. She spit on my face and called me selfish. I haven't spoken to that ex since, and looking back, I can't believe I even put myself through it. Her and her family were equally insane. Also found out after everything ended that my ex and her ex, the guy who would sneak over, were responsible for the death of their 1-month child but never charged. The world's kinda messed up sometimes. Story 6. Had a friend who did everything with me. She would constantly go through boyfriends left and right, but I never thought anything of it. It wasn't until I got in a relationship that I realized I was her third person that was ruining all her relationships. She wanted to be with me and kept dating these guys in an attempt to make me jealous. These guys worshipped her, and she just wanted me. I didn't have a clue until she started getting jealous of my girlfriend and trying to break us up. I finally cut her off and she just blatantly accused me of mistreating her, despite the fact that I never had. It was her "if I can't have him, no one will" moment. It took years to recover what was left of my reputation after that. I hate that I was the reason all those other guys got their hearts broken though. After 4 years, my name was semi-cleared. I never had to go to court over it because she wasn't confident enough to go lie in court then. Turns out that she actually got into a serious relationship. When he went to break up with her, she accused him and took him to court over it. He then broke out countless videos of her during arguments saying she would lie about it if he left. He also had compounded evidence of her mistreatments. He came in completely prepared. He knew who she was from day one, and he kept all the receipts. Sadly, even with all that evidence, they still ran the case for a while. And it all came to a head when he and his mother came to get some of his stuff from their apartment. She harmed him all the way out to the door, jumped in her car, and then she hurt him with it. At that point, the judge threw the case out and then he countersued her. It's so sad that it took all of that to happen for him to finally be let off the hook. But at least he got away from her and had his name cleared. We lived in a semi-small town and I was a well-known but behaved party guy. That's how everyone knew me and how she ruined my reputation. I was the party guy who handled his drinks better than most, but also the lame dad of the party. I made sure everyone was safe and everyone behaved. If Ash got too hammered, I made sure she got a room and no guys tried to sneak in there with her. If someone got hurt, I always had my kit with me and would get people back into party condition. If a fight was about to break out, I'd be the lame guy who broke it up and separated the two. She was one who got hurt. We got to talking, and it turned out that we had a bunch in common. We instantly became friends. This was 3 years before the whole drama. She watched me meet girls at parties and stuff, but I never had a girlfriend. I guess the label of girlfriend is what took her over the edge. That was when she changed entirely and the animosity between us began. It was always her, not him. Story 7. My boyfriend conspired with a friend to mistreat me. He, boyfriend, spent the night telling me he'd be okay if I slept with friend R because he hadn't had intimacy in a while. He kept going back and forth on it. I was distraught and asked over and over if he was serious. Eventually, he, boyfriend, had to go home because he had early classes in the morning. We had been out with a friend and another friend, D. I trusted them both, so we continued to hang out. I brought up what boyfriend had said. Both expressed concern, and we hung out because I didn't feel like being alone at the time. R stopped and bought a bottle of drinks to share. I wasn't in the mood to drink, so I barely had any. D went home after a while. It was about 4 a.m. at that point. We'd been driving around, so R pulled into his neighborhood and parked at the playground to hang out and talk. Now that we were alone, he told me that boyfriend wanted to sleep with a girlfriend of ours and that boyfriend told him R could have intimacy with me, which obviously made me very upset. I was crying a lot. He kept trying to make me drink, but I refused. He pulled me into his lap to kiss me, and I started crying more. I asked him what he was doing. If he knew that he was destroying the relationship between BF, R, and I. He said, yeah. I got back into the passenger seat, still crying. My house was miles away. It was very late, and now I did not feel safe. He'd exhibited some questionable behavior before, slightly unhinged, but nothing I'd ever been worried about until then. I was shaking and crying and scared as hell. He did what he'd set out to do. The last thing he ever said to me before he took me home was, "You look scared." I reported it a few days later when the shock wore off. He used protection. It was he said, she said. It went nowhere. I dropped out of college. I couldn't go back. So yeah, my boyfriend and our friend conspired to mistreat me and succeeded. Story 8. Do unhealthy non-monogamous situations count? If they do, I've had a couple of non-monogamous relationships go south because of unhealthy dynamics between multiple partners. In one case, a married couple was looking for partners. The wife had been having non-mono relationships for a few years already and was having such a good time of it that she encouraged her husband to do so as well. Initially, he was reluctant, but eventually decided to go for it. If you're thinking that he and I started dating, got along, and suddenly his wife got cold feet and shut everything down, you're right. She was fine opening the relationship as long as she was getting her needs and wants met, but once her husband was interested in another person, she couldn't handle it. She dumped all her partners and turned into Sweet Susie Homemaker, her life all about her devotion to her beloved husband, overnight. He was terribly conflicted about it. I saw where it was going, so I broke it off. My last non-mono relationship was with an old friend. He started dating another woman right about the time he and I started dating. For a while, things were fine, but they were never truly balanced. He prioritized his other girlfriend from the very beginning. After a few years of letting him talk to me into believing that everything was really equal when it absolutely wasn't, I finally realized that she was his girlfriend and I was just his side chick. I promptly kicked him to the curb. That non-monogamous period in my life wasn't good. I don't regret trying it out and seeing what it was like or the lessons learned from it, the biggest of which is that I'm definitely happiest in a monogamous relationship. I'll never have a poly or non-mono relationship again. There's too many variables, too many unhealthy people in the community, and I don't need that in my life. I've definitely known folks who are poly and it works great. That just absolutely isn't me. So, lessons learned. Story 9. My ex-boyfriend and I broke up because of his ex-wife. They were separated, moving towards divorce when he and I met. She ran off with his best friend, so no chance of reconciliation. But over the almost a year and a half that he and I dated, he was never able to set boundaries with her or hold her accountable. She financially ruined him. Opened cards in his name to fund her affair, but he wouldn't report fraud. She stopped paying in her car, which was in his name, and when the license plates and tags showed up in the mail, he just handed them over to her. She took his dogs in the separation, but anytime she wanted to dip out of town, she would leave the dog with him for free pet sitting, regardless of his availability to accommodate. So on and so forth. We fought about it all the time. I was picking up the tab during travel and dining out, and he was letting her walk all over him. But he thought if he played nice, he could protect his pension from her. She only would have been entitled to 50% of 2.5 years of retirement, which is a drop in the bucket over a 30-year career. He did all of this to protect a small fraction of his pension. Now I don't date separated or newly divorced men. Story 10. A bit of a long story. Took place over the course of 5 years, But the short of it is that my dad's girlfriend has broken up my fiancé and I up twice. We used to live or work with him on and off while my fiancé and I were in school. The first time we broke things off, she had tried to convince my fiancé that I was some useless schmuck. I admit I wasn't as attentive as I could have been. I was working 2 jobs, including the one with them, and I was a full-time student, so my priorities weren't quite where they should have been. After breaking things off, my fiancé and I talked about what happened and decided we just needed to step back to reflect, but not a full-blown breakup. We did well for a few years, during which my dad's girlfriend convinced my fiancé that she was bipolar, possibly schizophrenic. She would go to my fiancé's doctor's appointment with her and got her prescribed an ever-changing number of meds. It turns out it's hard to find the right balance of meds when you're treating a problem you don't have. My dad's girlfriend also convinced my fiancé she could never be a mother and should get a hysterectomy. Luckily, the doctors refused. When the idea was discussed with me, I was confused because my fiancé always wanted kids, but my dad's girlfriend made it clear I didn't have a say. My fiancé and I often talked about how things weren't right and we needed to change something, but we felt stuck. This all culminated in my fiancé having a mental breakdown, understandably so, and asking to be brought to a mental health facility. Well, there, my dad's girlfriend decided that my fiancé had abandoned us and that I needed to break up with her. Emotions were high, and I knew I couldn't let my fiancé come back, but I couldn't think of any other way to get her out, so I reluctantly broke things off. She left. We started talking again a couple weeks later after we both thought about what happened. My fiancé agreed that the only way to get her not to come back was to do what I did, so there's thankfully no hard feelings. I've since left, and my fiancé and I are back together and doing well. We haven't talked to my dad and his girlfriend since. Narcissism is a hell of a thing. Story 11. I've been deceived over by friends and partners alike. Cheated on. I've thrown myself into relationships 250% and gotten taken advantage of. I'm a very loving, affectionate, and giving partner. In my most recent relationship, my ex had a good co-parenting relationship with her first kiddo's dad. She'd constantly post about him in socials, sharing memories, and I was okay with it at first, even if it seemed a tad excessive sometimes. We were long distance and spent a lot of time in voice and video chat. Around the holidays, she was visiting family and he showed up and was being flirty with her. It made me uncomfortable, but I didn't want to spoil her time with her family, so I tried to just push it to the back of my mind. I ended up getting off the phone with her and she, I guess, could tell I was a bit upset or off. She even asked pointedly if her ex was making me uncomfortable. I told her to enjoy her time with her family. It was my own overthinking that was bothering me and we could talk about it later. So she's already got a feeling that he bothered me, and then later proceeded to make a TikTok with her son and him. She was standing very close to him, arm on his shoulder. Then towards the end of the video, she playfully turned towards him and pulled his beanie over his face. It came off as very playfully flirty to me, and only exacerbated my insecurities. She tried to call me on the way home with the kids in the car. The kiddo she has with him is old enough to understand we would have been talking about his dad if I talked about it then, so I requested we wait till she gets home to have a private discussion. And to again not worry about it because it's my own overthinking and insecurities, and I need her to just listen, hear me out, and not personalize it. When we finally got around to talking about it, she did personalize it, took it as an attack. I wasn't accusing her of cheating, I was simply trying to communicate. I felt insecure, and what I really needed was for her to just tell me she loves me and empathize with how things made me feel. Offer reassurance, I guess. She instead went into a tirade of what a piece of trash her ex is and how nothing would ever happen again. The next 2 days, we didn't talk much. When we resumed communication, she said something to the effect of, "I'm confident if you don't fix your overthinking, insecurities, and negative spirals, I could leave you." This was an extremely low blow. She's got a host of depression, trauma, grief, bad thoughts. All of that stuff I was there for her through. Cried with her in some cases. I tried to support her and lift her up as much as I could. Never once did I say or imply that I'd leave her over her depression or mental issues. And here she is giving me an ultimatum over mine, that I'm in active therapy trying to fix or at least be able to live with it more comfortably. I stewed on this for a few days and eventually couldn't reconcile all the effort I had been going through for her, seeing that she was so ready to discard me, so I broke up with her. I wish her well. I hope she gets better. This was about 3 weeks ago now. I'm still hurting over it and the hurtful things she's done in the aftermath. But the aftermath has also shown me that I was right to leave her. Anyways, on a lighter note, if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 12. She couldn't process her romantic feelings towards her best friend, me, because she was very attached to identity as a straight person and we're both women. She was very conflicted about her attraction to me. Instead of being honest with herself, her boyfriend, or me, she just started acting weird. She would dump her boyfriend and come over to my house. In private, she would rizz me up. She would playfully pin me to the wall and make eyes at me or offer to give me a massage. Stuff that can't really be explained away by girlfriendship. The next day, she would freak out and claim it was all joking, then get back with her boyfriend. I understand what to find yourself crushing on a female friend and what it's like to come out while living in a red state. I just told her it's cool, we can just be friends. My heart was crushed, but she was a cool girl and I'd rather be friends than not. The same week, she got back together with her boyfriend. A few weeks later, when I'm mentally moving on and shutting up a new person, and she's getting less attention from me, then bam, she dumps him again and calls me up. Repeat. She and I never officially dated. She was technically broken up with him when we hooked up, but all her boyfriends were dumped, taken back, dumped again, and had no idea why. I think we were all in love with her, but she was in love with attention and had us all in rotation. Story 13. My ex was best friends with her ex and talked to him every day. That isn't necessarily a deal breaker by itself, except it got complicated when I found out that he tried to mistreat her while they were dating. She stayed with him for a year after that and they never ended up sleeping together. She finally broke up with him because she felt like he was pressuring her into intimacy, something she was not comfortable with after the incident. She had told him that intimacy was off the table, at least until she could trust him again, and he wasn't okay with that. So they broke up. They continued to talk every day and she still considered him one of her best friends. Fast forward to a few months into a relationship. The ex calls her up in the middle of the night. Turns out he went on a date with some random girl, lost his V-card to that girl, decided intimacy wasn't all it was advertised to be, and called my ex to tell her he would be okay with a relationship with her without intimacy, referring to why they broke up. At this point, he's already well aware that we're dating, and he spends the next month trying to talk to her about their history and past relationship, while I am feeling more and more weird about this whole situation. Finally, I ask her what the deal is with this guy, and she has a complete mental breakdown and cries her eyes out for hours, and tells me the whole story. Maybe some people are okay with their SOs being close friends with their exes, but in this case, I'm uncomfortable with her being friends with her ex who mistreated her. There were other reasons why we broke up, but this was a big one. Story 14. For my personal one, a very clearly unstable woman who had never met before, who identified herself as a psychic, insisted to my ex that she would go to university, study and succeed in fashion and find the love of her life there, while standing right in front of me, through a mutual friend. About 2 months later, she left me, started attending online culinary and food science courses, and started dating another student almost immediately after, moved into his uni dorm, absolutely not allowed by the way, and insisted she was fulfilling what she wanted in life, even though the psychic was already wrong as she did not and still does not study fashion. Fast forward half a year and she has jumped between at least 3 other guys in that time, the first of which she met because of the boyfriend she had following me, and attempting to come back to me being another one. Apparently still fully believes in her prophecy and talks to our mutual friends about it. The juicier story, that is not mine, is 2 of my friends were dating for roughly a year. They were regulars at the bar I worked in, and the lady was best friends with my partner at the time, so I always got the gossip. I hired an old friend of mine to my staff, who at first hooked up with a colleague that the girlfriend had previously slept with, and then hooked up with my co-manager. About a month into this, boyfriend breaks up with girlfriend and immediately starts dating my colleague. Colleague quits her job, starts living with him. Colleague and girlfriend start feuding pretty hardcore for a while. This goes on for 2 months, before colleague breaks up with boyfriend for reasons still unknown. Colleague and girlfriend start hanging out quite a lot. Expected, but nice to see women coming together and making up. And then they start kissing. Colleague and girlfriend are now girlfriend and girlfriend, and have been for over a year. Own a home and 2 dogs together. These were 2 of the most straight women who had always insisted on themselves being straight, and the best relationship they've both ever had is with each other. Story 15. My first real girlfriend had a friend that was always right there to be her shoulder to cry on. I told her numerous times he was into her. It was obvious to literally every one of our mutual friends. Every time we argued, he'd come running. He'd find excuses to talk shit about me, even if the topic of conversation had nothing to do with me. For her birthday, I got her tickets to see her favorite band. When I was getting to know her, she and I randomly said the same obscure band at the same time as being her favorite, so the tickets were really meaningful. He twisted her up about them until she was convinced I only bought the tickets because I liked the band, so my gift to her was basically a gift for myself. The last day we went on, he literally spent the entire time texting her, back when texting actually cost money. Every 10 minutes is like clockwork, as if he was just trying to interrupt as much as he could. We were planning on losing her V-cards that night, and she told him that. We broke up, they got together, no big surprise. Years later, I'm in college, sitting on the couch watching TV, and my phone rings a number I've never seen. I answer it, and it's him. He's hammered. They're at a party with people we were friends with in high school. He's screaming at me to come and fight him. I call my best friend who's at the party and ask if I should come down there to fight him. My friend assures me that not only is it not worth it because I'm twice his size and it wouldn't be a good look to be pounding in such a little guy, but he's also embarrassed a ton out of Steph, her real name, so I'm already coming out a winner by doing nothing. Apparently, me laughing at him and hanging up sent him on a tear. The whole party is trying to get him to leave at this point. She called me the next day, sheepishly apologizing. See, when she and I dated, she'd pitch a fit if I even entertained the idea of getting hammered. She hated me fighting even more, so I didn't do it. Now she's dating a dude with clear drinking issues who looks for fights so hard he's calling up people he hasn't seen in years to start them. I coolly brushed off her apology and just said, "That's some cat you got there. Good luck with that." She dumped him that afternoon. I like to think I played a role in their demise. A few months ago, she randomly messaged me at 1 a.m. on Instagram asking if I ever thought about what happened between us. I just told her we weren't right for each other, and Eric helped us figure it out faster than we would have without his help. Then I asked how her husband and kids are. Story 16. I was living with a girlfriend in an unfamiliar city. I'd been through some challenges and kind of just crash-landed with her after we'd been doing the distance thing for a while. She and I started to have less fun. She was starting to really get aggravated when I'd talk about going hiking or out for drinks with some people from work. I was finally making friends, but she was tied to her school program and began to really imprint her frustration and envy on me. My girlfriend went on a trip home, 2 weeks without me. I was out rock climbing with friends when one of them, let's call her M, took a fall and hurt herself. We spent the whole night waiting for rescue, and the rescue was chaotic and shambolic. But in the end, they pulled her up the cliff. The rescue team, my friends, and I all took turns carrying the litter out of the woods. A 45-minute technical hike and a good day. It comforted her the whole way out. Spent the next day in the hospital with her while my friends went and got some sleep. We trauma bonded in a big way. When we got back to the city, everything was different. We started spending more time together, and since girlfriend was away, there was nothing to keep us apart. We never physically cheated, but whatever we created was firm. When my girlfriend got back, I knew right away that things were over. I got to work on finding a way out as soon as I could. Em and I never actually did get together, but I learned that people could be genuinely happy for me without needing to be part of the things that made me happy. It was a big learning moment for me. Story 17. My ex had a close male friend who repeatedly expressed romantic interest in her and kept trying to talk her into cheating on me or leaving me for him. She kept turning him down, but also kept hanging out with him, including one-on-one hangouts. I told her straight up that I wasn't going to tell her who she is or isn't allowed to be friends with, but that it was a deal breaker for me that she kept hanging out with somebody who was actively trying to sabotage our relationship and had so little respect for not only me but us as a couple. She refused to stop hanging out with him, so I broke it off with her. I 100% believe her, and still do, when she said that she had no intention of ever sleeping with him or being romantically involved, but I refused to be in a relationship with somebody who would tolerate, and by allowing it, endorse, that disrespect of her relationship or partner. I know from mutual friends that even now, 5 or 6 years later, she's still speaking to and hanging out with him, but still refusing his advances and hasn't slept with him. He's honestly just the definition of a spineless simp. And frankly, I think she's used to the ego boost of having somebody pining after her so strongly. Story 18. My wife was always on a high drive and I had a low libido. However, despite me wanting to be intimate with her, she stopped being attracted to me. She got bored of my body after a while. So when we became friends with a man, it didn't take her long to begin flirting with him. I thought it was a good idea to let him in so that we could each get our needs met, and he really liked both of us, calling us the two lights of his life. Pretty soon, it became apparent that she was his favorite, and he was hers. They started to leave me behind, do things without me, leave me out of conversations. He would bring her gifts and not me. One time, he came into the house and had intimacy with her even before saying hi to me. At every step, I expressed my hurt, explaining how left out I felt and how lonely I was. I was brushed off and told that it was my responsibility to force my way in to be included. In August, he told me that he didn't want to be intimate with me anymore. He swore up and down that it wasn't my body, that he just didn't want to have that sort of relationship with me. He promised to help me feel beautiful again, but after just a couple weeks, he began ignoring me for my wife. This whole situation completely broke me, that neither my wife or boyfriend found me attractive. It destroyed my self-esteem. I tried so hard to keep my head up, to work on myself and feel better, but there were times when I'd say a passive-aggressive comment or say something like, "Of course it's going to just be the two of you alone again." And where was my wife in all this when I needed support? Off with him, of course. She even uninvited me for her birthday trip so that she could have intimacy with him. Literally, that was her excuse. It's my birthday, I should get to enjoy it. She didn't want my depression from being ignored to ruin her birthday, so she left me behind, only to come home with stories about how much fun they'd had without me. It took me 2 days to get her to understand how much that hurt me and to agree to make it up to me. This whole time, they would flaunt their life in front of me. They openly talked about how much they wanted to be with a mutual friend, how they wanted to make a Tinder account to find someone, and they'd do it loudly in the other room while I was sitting there, touch-starved and feeling completely invisible. Long story short, I eventually realized that the two of them would never respect me. They'd claimed that they loved me, but their actions said otherwise. My wife already had plans to move in with them before the divorce conversation even happened, so it was a no-brainer that she would move out. I went no contact with them, and my life has been so much better since then. Ever since the garbage took itself out, I've been thriving. I don't miss them in the slightest, and I hope I never see either of them again. Story 19. It was my fault. We were high school sweethearts, and during our whole relationship, we would be open our E&M on and off. It was something we loved doing, and we knew we had a strong enough bond that no one could ever come in between us. After years of being closed, we decided to open it again, but I think the main difference this time around was that we allowed feelings to get involved, deciding that we were polyamorous. Previously, it would just be for fun and just for intimacy. This time, I fell in love with my secondary partner and I saw greener grass with him. I broke my primary partner's heart, and my secondary partner dumped me. I didn't and don't deserve it, but my primary partner took me back and slowly forgave me over time. We've had a lot of discussions about the status of our relationship and how we want to proceed going forward. We decided to stay at E&M or poly because that's genuinely who we are and how we want to live our lives. For the time being. But I know I'll never see greener grass with anyone else because, among other reasons, my partner has been and always will be my absolute best friend, and it will break me to lose him. And I'll never forgive myself for losing sight of that in the first place. Story 20. It was the mother of my ex-fiancé. She was a very keeping up with the Jones type of woman who was all about keeping up appearances. She was nice at first, and I knew I had a strained relationship with my own family, so I originally believed she wanted the mother to bond with me. Unfortunately, when she gained my trust, she flipped a switch and started treating me like my own parents did. Basically, she wanted me to make the family look good, so she would demand things of me I wasn't comfortable with, like going back to church because I'm an ex-Christian, but she convinced my ex that I was going to hell and was going to take him with me. She got mad at me because I didn't want to dress to the nines, like full hair and makeup at 6 a.m. just to have lunch at the park, and complained it made her look bad to their work friends because I was grumpy and they thought I was sick. When she felt like she had my trust, she would have heart-to-hearts with me and my ex separately, and then turn around and use that info to turn us against each other. She blessed gym equipment to either turn me into the girl my ex-fiancé deserved or send me on my way. Basically, she felt the need to mother, not just me, but anyone. My ex or her sisters stated we were all just bringing her kids down because they couldn't hold down jobs and basically leeched off mom and dad or their partners. So yeah, I could fill a book with stuff that happened. I'm pretty sure there are some emotional going on because that family was way too open about it. Like his mom telling us about things she's done with his dad. You can't look at edible plant without cringing. Story 21. Technically, this wasn't cheating, as I have no proof. But basically, I had a strained marriage made worse when the in-laws came to live in the apartment under our home. Basically, we had a major disagreement wherein I said they could set the rent the same as it was in their last living situation, but I didn't consider that she also wanted us to pick up all utilities. Eventually, we were playing games online as de-stress, and we met some folks in the game. I worked nights, and she played often with and without me. This is important later. My father-in-law also played with us and disliked how she talked with one guy online. I didn't care, as I'm not insecure. She eventually asks me about a fun trip she's going to be going to during New Year's Eve. I'm working that night, as always, so I just say, sure thing, have fun. Don't let me hold you back, and you don't have to ask me permission. Just let me know you're safe and you're there, as I don't want to be the hubby who holds their woman back. Wifey goes out, she left her watch. The watch buzzed with constant texts, so I figured I'd make a funny joke and spy on her, expecting nothing. Discover texts from the guy and they're romantic in nature. Story 22. The relationship didn't end entirely because of other people. It was bad in general and there were lots of other reasons, but his circle of friends and family played a part in it ending. He's from a touristy small town where the locals don't really like to let the out-of-towners in. They come from a small town as well, and I'm no stranger to this kind of behavior. But this was next level. These people acted like living there was a personality trait because it's a popular vacation destination. I would describe it all as elitist. His friends immediately disapproved of me for that reason alone. I was not from the touristy small town. After I met them, he started treating me entirely differently. He would mock the way I dressed because it wasn't like his other friends. He would make fun of my personality. And on top of that, he would do this in front of his friends, which encouraged it all to continue. Anytime I confronted him on this, he gave some nonchalant answer. That's just the way it is here. One time he actually said to me, Nobody liked insert his friend's girlfriend's name here for 2 years, and then things changed. It's just how it is. When I ended it, I told him I wasn't interested in being the subject of small-town gossip by people who acted like they were in middle school but were almost 30. Oh, and his family kicked me out of the house when I came down with a 101-degree fever while I was staying with him. I had to travel 3-ish hours back to the city I lived in at the time. Apparently, I wasn't being social enough while I was super sick and trying to be mindful to not spread it to anyone else.
What excuses have you heard when you were dumped? First date? Me. I don't want kids, ever. Had surgery to make sure I never would. Him. Okay. 2 years later, wedding plans underway. Him. So I want to have a couple kids within 5 years. Me. What? You know I had my tubes tied. Him. Yeah, I know, but I thought I could go impregnate my last fiancé. She doesn't want kids, but doesn't mind surrogating for us. And you could raise them. Cool, huh? Me. Boggles for a full minute. What part of I went through a painful and expensive surgery to make sure I never have kids suggests to you that I actually want to raise kids, let alone yours by another woman? Him. You're ruining my dreams. I thought you'd change your mind if you really loved me. Picks up chick and Jim the following week, phones me constantly to describe in explicit detail how amazing she is, marries her 6 months later. They punch out a couple of Rugrats and she makes him sell the vintage Camaro that he's literally spent the last decade rebuilding from the ground up, including using a metal lathe to build parts and get a minivan instead. I got tired of the phone calls and moved 1,000 miles away. Screw this crap. Story 2. My first wife and I always fought because I wasn't living up to my potential. Now some backstory. We met in high school, where I was a National Merit Scholar, a 4.0 student, and a number of honors classes and programs. The physics club, the math club, academic decathlon, etc. During my senior year, I secured a senatorial sponsorship to West Point Academy. I got her pregnant, which I freely admit was my dumb mistake our senior year. Had no intention of exploring any option other than having the baby, so I didn't go to college. Instead, I entered the working world as a husband and father at 19, working 2 jobs. Finnegan's line cook and newspaper delivery at night. Make ends meet while she did no work and continued to go to college while her parents watched our baby. This was the time when she was constantly down on me for failing to live up to my potential. As if any 19-year-old with no college education, a new baby, and paying someone else's college tuition is going to be doing awesomely in life. In the years since we've split up, I've managed to run a successful martial arts studio, be involved in several moderately successful local Celtic bands, make computer programming my career. I'm currently head of software development at a mid-sized company, publish a reasonably successful novel, maintain a website that helps about 2 million Celtic musicians a year, create my own line of tin whistles, which I sold successfully for a couple of years. Oh yeah, and earned 3 patents, which made me a ton of cash during the dot-com boom. In your face, witch. Story 3. It's funny how much people read into breakup explanations or excuses. I don't believe humans are very good at explaining behavior changes due to unconscious emotional impulses, such as falling in love with another person. They're so off the mark about the real reasons it's not even funny. They don't even know what's going on, so all explanations are irrelevant. In my world, I don't feel the same about you anymore. It is equivalent to, I think we're growing apart because you're fat and your finances are out of whack. The former explanation is truer, although less consoling. We feel better if we can pinpoint our mistakes. Women, my friends, will overlook every bad thing about you. Finances, looks, crappy car, being overweight, lack of education. If they truly are in love with you, don't ever hear an excuse. Don't focus on the words because they're just saying, I don't love you anymore. Story 4. This will probably be buried in older comments, but just hear me out. I got my computer science degree and was hired as a software engineer by a fairly large company right out of college. I make an income comparable to yours, and I get to travel overseas a few times a year for work. I'm 30 now, and I've been working here for 7 years. I made the mistake of letting my career determine where I was headed. I used my career as an excuse to forget my other life goals and dreams. You end up making a good salary, but you still live paycheck to paycheck because you buy into consumerism, rack up bills, and probably have a mortgage. If you're in a similar situation, then your ex was right. You are going nowhere. Why? Because you're already there. You've chosen your path as a career man, and that is what you have to look forward to for the next 30 years. While some people strive for this, a lot of us don't. Do I really find it enjoyable to spend my days in an office working for someone else? I saw where I was headed. When I looked into the future, I saw myself driving to the office every day. You know how damn depressing that is? Then I realized I actually have a choice. Sold my townhouse and saved up a bunch of money. This year, I'm taking a break from the corporate world for a while to chase some dreams. I'm just saying it's quite possible this is what your ex meant when she said you were going nowhere. Story 5. I'm way too late to this thread, but I have 2 stories. You're cutting into my World of Warcraft raiding time. The dude was in university on loans, taking the bare minimum of courses. His landlords fed him dinner, his 1 meal a day. He had no job and no social life outside of me. I, on the other hand, was in an intensive full-time university program that demanded 12 to 14-hour days, 6 to 7 days a week, a busy social life, and I still found time to see him. The other guy was thinking of taking a job in another province. We'd been together for 3 months. He asked my opinion, and I said, whatever you decide, I'll support you. Turns out this was the wrong answer. I asked him what the right answer would have been. Apparently, it would have been either, I'll move with you, or, but what about our relationship? This happened right after he'd borrowed $650 from me, which he never paid back. I later found out he'd been cheating on me with a girl who had the same extremely uncommon name as mine. Story 6. He broke up because he cheated on me with his ex-girlfriend. His reasoning was, I became too committed. I can't become committed to a woman at this point in my life. Maybe in the past, but not now. When I started to cry, he continued, you're so young, you'll get over it. You'll have tons of other guys. So I retorted, I have more years to have more guys, but it also means I'll have a longer time to remember what you did to me and what a freaking schmuck you really are. Made it seem like 25-year-olds don't have feelings as opposed to guys in their mid-30s. Like they have a love-life buoyancy that makes them unbreakable if you drop them hard. When I texted him later in seething hatred, he texted back, I'll have a guy by midnight. Move on. I imagine he said this casually, like a police officer waving along traffic. I was so angry because he had earlier broken up with me and then had courted me back. Why did he want me back? Because he was tired of chasing tail. I was angry at him for betraying me and angry at myself, too, for letting myself be fooled a second time. Story 7. A friend of mine was dating a good-looking Swedish girl for months before dumping her for dubious reasons. He had finally met her parents and discovered that her mother had flabby arms. He operated by the rule that the mother is the future image of the daughter. He said, what's the point of continuing the relationship? We all told him it was crazy. Perhaps the most bizarre part, he lived across the street from us and he broke up with her via a written letter. A letter that he mailed from across the street. She was confused and no one among us had the guts to tell her what happened. College years. Story 8. After I found out she was cheating, you're too good and nice, I don't love you anymore. I fell in love with someone else. So you want someone who treats you like crap? I want someone who can make me do things when I don't want to do them. We were married for less than 3 months. We had dated for 7 years. Not bad, man. Karma bit her in the butt, though. Story 9. Lisa. What do you say to a boy to let him know you're not interested? Marge Simpson.
Well, honey,
Homer.
Let me handle this, Marge. I've heard them all. I like you as a friend. I think we should see other people. I speak no English.
Lisa.
I got the idea.
Homer.
I'm married to the sea. I don't want to end you, but I will.
Marge Simpson.
Honey, besides, tell this boy that you're very flattered, but you're just not ready for this kind of thing.
Lisa.
Thanks, Mom.
Homer.
If that doesn't work, 6 simple words. I'm not gay, but I'll learn.
Story 10. This was the summer of 2010, mid-June, to be exact. I woke up that morning to a call from my dad letting me know his uncle was in the hospital after attempting to end it all, and that his mom, my grandmother, was hospitalized for a panic attack after finding out what had happened to her brother. This was also the morning of a very close friend's wedding that I was a part of. My girlfriend and I at the time were invited, as I was in the ceremony, and she knew all of my friends and was cool with coming to hang out. So I had a lot on my plate to start with. After hearing the bad news, I called my then-girlfriend to try to talk about everything, in a rather hungover state due to the previous night of genuinely drinking. Right then and there, she told me that I was too emotionally needy, that I needed to be a man about things, and that she didn't want to be with me anymore. I hung up, called my friend and told him what was going on and that I might not be able to make it. We'd been together for 3 years and all of life had just piled up in 1 hour. He understood. After about 2 hours of being a sourpuss about everything, I decided to show up to my friend's wedding. A half hour into the ceremony, I wore cut-off shorts, a t-shirt with a blazer, high-top chucks, and sunglasses. I had a 6-pack of cheap beer in one hand and flowers for the bride in the other. I was seated. Told that the open bar was opened early for me, proceeded to get messed up, sang karaoke, went to a bar, got in a fight, cried, went home, and lived life. It was one of the greatest days for me. My dad's uncle was fine. Grandma turned out okay. I was glad to be out of that relationship. Story 11. I was 19, a student, and had been dating this girl throughout literally my entire teens, and planned on marrying her. She was just about a week over 18 at the time. She and I had returned from vacation with my mother and stepfather on a Sunday night, and proceeded to drink lightly. Later that night, after passing out at my mother's, I was awoken at 2 in the morning to my mother pulling me out of bed and leading me outside to the driveway, where she told me to sneak and look in the back seat of one of her vehicles. I witnessed my then 38-year-old stepfather having intimacy with my girlfriend. I attempted to bust the window with bare fists to get my hands on him. I wasn't very successful. At that time, I made a sprint to the garage where I kept my firearms. During this, and lucky for him, he had his keys on him and was able to get his truck started. As I came around to the driveway, he was just making a getaway through the yard and onto the road, both still nude. I did not fire my weapon at that moment. It had already made it away. Admittedly, I was completely out of my mind and was going to ruin the rest of my life that night if I was able to make it to him in time. I waited and paced around the street for them to return. Unbeknownst to me, my mother, of course, in a frantic state, phoned law enforcement 20 minutes or so after they left, exclaiming that this man was driving intoxicatedly and needed to be arrested. Yes, I'm aware of how stupid that sounds, and so is she. Anyway, after lurking for over 2 hours, I noticed a vehicle coming. It was fully stealth at this moment. I was ready to do what I still sometimes, in the deepest part of my mind, wish I could have done. Thankfully, the vehicle turned out to be a police officer's vehicle. I immediately set my pistol down and waited as he pulled up to my mother's house and walked to my front door before I slid quietly into the back of the house, out of sight. I wasn't about to leave my mother hanging, so I made my way through the house to the door with her. I had to explain that this was just blown out of proportion and that my mother had a panic attack and that I'm sorry about the wasted time of his. He said he drove around searching a small portion of the area and didn't see them anywhere. I again said sorry for the worry and that it was no problem. I explained I'd just comfort my mother and we would find somewhere to go for the night. After around 20 minutes of speaking with the officer, he started to make his way to his car and leave. Just at the time, they, ex and stepfather pulled up. I immediately felt that same rush that I felt at first, but because of the variables, I remained calm. I walked inside so as to avoid saying anything to anyone at the time. I grabbed all my belongings, destroyed both of their phones, and tossed them in an obscure location so it would take them a while to discover and mess them up. I grabbed my mother and her important belongings and left the both of them there with the officer. Initiated sobriety tests as I was pulling away. I'm still not sure of the outcome of those tests and don't care, and that was the last time I saw the man who slept with his fiance's son's girlfriend. I took my mother home to where my apartment was and immediately grabbed every single one of my ex's belongings, walked them out to the dumpster, and threw them in. Poured some bleach on the clothes too. And hours later, still early morning, my ex decided to show up at my apartment, demanding I let her in. She came with one of her friends who I'd probably told to screw off, and in a very loud tone, I pushed her out of my place and slammed the door in both of their faces. I told her through the door to go look in the dumpster for any of her crap. Felt good to say that. Felt good to hear her burst into cries. Stupid materialistic witch. That was the last time I saw her. That man's cowardice saved his life that night, and mine as well, in a messed up way. I didn't end up making the biggest mistake of my life. That situation still bears a small toll in my life when it comes to finding a relationship. It's been 4 years since then. I haven't been in a single relationship. I've gotten lucky every now and again. Yeah, sure. Doesn't really mean anything to me either way. Against everyone's beliefs, it never really hurt me like I imagined it should have. Yeah, I was seeing red that night, and yeah, my views on relationships are much different now, but I'm 100 times happier now than I could have ever been dating that girl. I made myself some money. I enjoy vacations and cruises often. I'm young and social. I think the reason I was able to get past any sort of depression is because I was raised in a somewhat proper family and never really experienced anything as crazy as that. My ex came from the epitome of a crappy family, and I somewhat suspect that she would turn out as crazy as them. So to me, this was like an episode of Jerry Springer, and I was basically thinking, screw this, I'm out. I guess it was just so trashy I failed to relate emotionally with it. Good for me, in my opinion. I'd say I couldn't be any happier right now in my life, aside from the fact that some of the women I've met become severely disappointed when I'm not all down for the lovey-dovey stuff. Other than that, I have truly good times. The reason I tell it is because I've never heard a reason why this happened, nor could I think of one myself. I just assumed it was bad luck. Story 12. I'm not sure if this technically fits, but it still sucked. I dated a girl for years, and we always talked about getting married, but she kept wanting to put it off. She would say, wait until I graduate, or wait until after grad school, for which I moved across the country with her. One day she told me she didn't love me anymore. When I asked her why we stayed together for so long and what could have possibly changed, she said, I haven't been in love with you for a long time. I was just too nice to say anything. What the heck? I realized in that moment how freaking dumb she was and didn't even bother fighting for her. Story 13. I went on a date with a girl who claimed she'd only been in lesbian relationships for the past 8 years, but identified as queer, so she was also attracted to men. The first day, we had a good time at dinner, talked about nerd stuff, had a few drinks, and went for a walk. We then headed back to her place, and she was all over me, almost to the point where I was uncomfortable. Good times were had, and I think she had a great time from everything I could tell. Sometime around 3 a.m., I ended up getting dressed and leaving. The next morning, I woke up at around 11, checked my email, and saw this. I think I'm not queer, that I'm a true lesbian. I thought I wanted to have intimacy with men again, but after last night, I realized it has nothing to offer me. I just didn't feel anything. I'm sorry. Goodbye. If that doesn't crush her ego, I don't know what will. As a quirky side note, I later found out she was one of the most prominent writers of Lord of the Rings gay fanfiction, in which most of her stories involve gay hobbit. This made a lot of sense, as there were 2 fairly decent amateur paintings of Elijah Wood as Frodo, shirtless, in her living room. She explained them to me as kind of a hobby of hers at the time. I thought she meant painting. Story 14. I got dumped by my girlfriend in 10th grade because her parents said they could tell I wasn't going to amount to anything after I got out of high school. I remember the conversation and being completely confused as to why they would have such an assessment of a teen who was only a sophomore. Now they came to such conclusions since I'd only been dating her for a few months and had only met them a couple of times. As the years went on, I eventually graduated. Her parents came up to me and told me that they were very sorry that they ever said what they did. They said she really did care about me but didn't want to disappoint them, so she followed their suggestion. They then proceeded to attempt to reconcile the relationship. Now 2 years passed with no real attachment anymore, only to find out that I'd been dating someone for about a year, who was now my wife of 12 years. Dad wasn't interested. The dad turned to me and said, maybe we were right about you being nothing. I can remember being so happy and celebrating graduation and then this foul comment just shattering the mood, but I laughed it off and ignored them. Years later, I found out that she had moved in with some guy she met that summer and ended up pregnant. Not once, but 3 times over the course of the next 3 years. She now lives next door to her parents with 5 kids in what looks like a Goodwill thrift store in her front yard. She also looked several hundred pounds from her last high school reunion and, from what I was told, was married a few times. I never got a chance to thank her parents for steering me away from that train wreck. Story 15. We had been together for 5 years when she moved cross-country to start med school while I finished my undergrad. A couple of weeks after graduation, while I was in the connecting airport on my way to see her and job hunt in her new city, she said, "You're too much of a distraction. I'm afraid I'm going to fail out because of you." Translation: I want you to devote yourself to helping me cope with my issues, with no expectation of anything in return. Happy birthday to me. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 16. Gather round, boys and girls, for this is how I got dumped once. We were living together for around 3 years or so at this point. It was Easter Sunday. Him: I'm leaving you. Me: what? Why? Him: I've met somebody else and she's the one I was meant to be with. Me: oh, okay. Is it Jay? A female friend of his. She was awesome. Him: no, her name is Faria. Me: like the hair color? Him: angry face, grumble something. Me: wait, we're together almost all the time. Where did you meet her? Him: she lives with me. Me, confused, look around. Where? In the closet? Under the bed? For the record, I thought he was kidding at this point. Him: in my head. Me: in your head? Him: in the temple in my head. Me: in your head. For Christ's sake, you try and process this. Him: she's my soulmate. I'm sorry. Me: in your head. Him: yes. Me: you're cheating on me with a voice in your head? Him: she's in the temple in my head. Me: you're leaving me for a voice in your head. Him: me. Just kind of burst out laughing at this point. Him: prolonged usage of substances, kids. That's bad. Very bad. Last I talked to him, they had gotten married and had some brain babies, so I guess good for them. Story 17. I can't be with someone who walks like an 80-year-old. One cold February day 4 years ago, I woke up and couldn't stand up. The whole point is that my spine decided to close in and start crushing my spinal cord. This left me in constant pain. A 9 or 10 on the 10-point scale. 24/7. I was taking 10 Vicodin a day and dealing with therapy when I got dumped, but I didn't dwell on it because I had bigger fish to fry. The pain scale of 6 became a new normal. Even when everything was A-okay, I was still at a 6. After a year, I dumped the substances. After 2, I met the woman who would become my wife. After 3.5 years, the pain went away as mysteriously as it came. The only lasting effects are that I can't feel my feet anymore. And when I can feel something down there, it's in the form of random pains. Story 18. Basically the same. Had an amazing relationship. We had mind-blowing intimacy, and I really enjoyed just being around her. We were together for almost 5 years because she started acting weird. We basically broke up because we are going down separate paths in life, but really came down to the fact that I'm not rich. To paraphrase our last email together, it's not all about the money, but it would make things a lot easier. I'm going to go date for a while, and in a year, if you have more money, I'll date you again. Sucks, man, because I freaking hate women right now. All I see are shallow women you can barely have a conversation with. You click on the TV and fat, old suffering dudes at perfect 10s hanging off their arms. My mom tells me, there are plenty of hot hippie chicks out there that won't care what you do or how much you make. We'll be happy being with a guy that treats her so well. Such BS. The moral of the story is, gentlemen, it doesn't matter how you treat a woman. In the end, it's about money and the fantasy she lives in her head daily. I have a lot of very good-looking friends, and they treat their women like such crap, it's unbelievable, but guess what? Girls cling on till the end. Just last week, my friend was trying to have intimacy with his ex in the bathroom while his current girlfriend was trying to get in. Did she break up with him? Heck no. Her pretty little bum comes dragging back every time. I'm in a new relationship now, and she's really cool, but I literally feel nothing for her. Not even close. I feel like Scrooge or something. Usually, after a rebound, I don't even think about an ex, but I can't shake this one. There are a lot of fish in the sea, but most of them are bottom feeders. Story 19. I don't see how people let this relationship stuff get to them. Don't get me wrong, it was about as lovey-dovey of a romantic as you could imagine in high school, and I had a decently long-term relationship as well. But since I've been in college, I've really had a hard time caring about fooling around, finding a girlfriend, or anything romantically related. I've realized how many more important aspects of life there are. OP, you've got a pretty well-paying job and you're supporting yourself very well in a rough economy. Focus on hanging out with your guy friends and enjoy your life by doing whatever the hell it is you like to do. I've got a group of guys that I've known since I was 10, and they'll mean more to me than any girl I'll ever meet. I can tell you with complete confidence that none of them will ever leave me due to any of the BS excuses I've read in this thread. This doesn't mean I want to put my thing in. It just means that I enjoy myself in their company more than any female I've ever met, including the one that I thought I'd be in love with forever and ever, have kids with, get married and all that jazz, etc. Try to listen to my advice and enjoy the bountiful pleasures of life that have nothing to do with women. and you'll see they'll come flocking to you like you never imagined possible. Of course, there's the, but she was the one, you'll never understand, only I will ever feel this way excuse. If you actually think you're the only person that's ever been smitten with a member of the opposite gender, only to get one in the back by them, and that's just hilarious because it literally happens to everyone at some point in their lives. Stop caring about it, and don't struggle against things you can't control. The most important life lesson everyone has to learn is to pick their fights carefully. Enjoy the pretty amazing life you've got right now. I would end anyone to have a $70,000 salary a few years after I graduate. There are a lot of people that would love to be in your position in life. Don't squander what you've got by fretting over some worthless woman. Story 20. I don't know why I've been dumped so much before. I'm pretty freaking awesome, to be honest. My first serious boyfriend dumped me with the words, "I don't know what love is." I later found out via mutual friends that he thought I was clingy. My second boyfriend asked me out, but broke up with me because he really only wanted me to go to prom with him. He dumped me before prom though, and then was offended that I wouldn't go with him. What an all-around idiot. Then I was dumped by a guy I wasn't even dating. He said he was going off to join the Marine Police, but he never actually joined. Finally, my last ex dumped me without really doing any of the work. He'd fallen out of love with me, and about a year before we broke up, he was content with staying with me because he didn't want to mess up our friendship, giving me false hope that anything romantic was still there. Eventually, I got sick of it, called him out on it, and it was over. Now we have no real friendship because he was too much of a wuss to be honest with me. And now I'm in a freaking amazing relationship, going on 4 years now, with the most awesome guy and fellow Redditor who more than makes up for all those silly dudes. Going through those crappy relationships makes me appreciate how awesome and healthy my current one is. I'm so glad they dumped me. It'll get better, dude. Hugs. Story 21. I'm not obsessed with you enough. I feel like that means there's something wrong. After she was hit on by a guy in a bar and flirted a bit back while intoxicated, I didn't care about the harmless flirting, but apparently that was proof that she didn't like me enough after a whopping 8 weeks to continue dating me. Meanwhile, she was in absolute tears telling me this. This was followed by, "What if I cheat on you? I was flirting. That means I might cheat on you." It sucked and hurt, but after a little while, I realized I was probably better off not being in that relationship anyway. Story 22. It was short, only 4 months, but after changing her relationship status after I asked her on a date and giving me all the signs that she actually really liked me, she dumped me the day after I drove an hour away to stay at her sister's place to stay the night and babysit her nephew. "I just don't like you enough. It was easy to get you, so I went with it." What she didn't say outright was that she wanted to be single because my friend was returning from a year overseas and she'd been besotted with him for ages. I found that fact out after she dumped me. I was a placeholder, in place just long enough to really fall for her. Story 23. A girl I knew had 2 or 3 months left in town before graduating. We started something small. She stopped because she wanted it to be more serious, under the impression that I was just using her, because what else could she start in the next 3 months? She finally agreed to think long term. She left for a week to go apartment hunting and invited me out with her. I couldn't schedule the time off. She came back, said she didn't want anything long term, and went home with a random dude at a bar a week later. The dude happened to be my good friend and neighbor who was unaware of her prior affair. He spent the night bragging about it to me before I realized we were talking about the same girl. Story 24. An old boyfriend broke up with me because I was in art school. I had too much drive and was too busy. Truth be told, I wasn't too busy, but I dedicated myself to my studio to make something of myself because I was pursuing an art degree. I went to the major at a large university rather than a typical art school because I disliked the atmosphere and money grubbing of places like Savannah or the Art Institutes. I wasn't guaranteed an internship semester at a university that hosts a job fair for the art school. To help myself, I was very active on campus and would volunteer my graphic design abilities and had a ton of commissions for money. On top of that, I had fencing practice almost every evening after class, so I scheduled my week so far in advance that I managed to see this dude every day face to face, connect via text and email in the morning, occasional lunches and in the evening. However, it still wasn't enough for him. It was incredibly selfish, and his future seemed more bleak than mine. He was an English major with no concentration, but had a pretty good research job. But he constantly made fun of me because I was an art student. I never made fun of him, but I would retort on occasion, and he would say I was acting sensitive. I tend to think he was threatened by the fact that an art major had more of a future than him because I was given temporary jobs like layout design for publications, website design, children's book creations, scientific illustration for the university museum, and medical illustration. This is the field I'll probably go into for graduate school, and I know I can make a living on this just by freelancing. In the summer, I got an amazing local graphic design internship, and I was still able to get lessons at a nearby fencing club to compete for nationals. I never tried to outdo him, nor did I say anything because I tend to never mix my work and my personal life, but he made a relationship a giant competition. It's also true that my father is paying for my education, but he started saving money for my education before I was even born. I'm super impressed by how he managed to do this while he was slowly paying off law school loans. To this day, I'm super grateful for how hard my father works, and I aspire to be just like him. I love him and my mother, who also worked side jobs to help pay for my school with all my heart. Funny enough, this ex often made me feel guilty because my father was paying for my education while he was paying student loans. However, I'm paying for my rent, electricity, food, and other spending expenses because I chose to. In order to keep it up, I took a low-wage 10-hour job with commissions. My father has to pay for 2 other siblings to go to the same, very expensive in-state university, and I didn't want to be a burden any longer on my parents. All in all, I'm used to people teasing me about being an art major, but for a boyfriend to constantly rag on me for it means good riddance. Story 25. A couple of years ago, I was quasi-dumped by my fiancée. She was growing extremely distant, and no matter what I tried to do, how many times we talked, putting more effort into spending more time together, I was working nights and switched to days, losing $400 a month premium because she said that would help. Nothing really worked. She was constantly dodging me physically, not only intimately, but no hugs, kiss on the cheek before leaving for work, cuddles, that sort of stuff, and emotionally. Talking to everyone else on Facebook at her workplace about our relationship, I was able to get free couples counseling from a benefits package at work, and she said she would try but was never able to commit to a specific date. She ultimately decided the reason was that she magically didn't love me anymore. I got tired of this act really fast, so I told her if she wasn't willing to commit to working this out, then we should break up. She seemed surprised that I would suggest that. So we split up, but we were living together. Since the place was in my name, I could have kicked her out, but trying to maintain some integrity, I knew that she would eventually find a place. So I stayed with a friend for about a month while paying the bills for her to get her stuff in order. When I came back to our old apartment, I found that everything we had bought together was gone. She even took all the toilet paper. She also went on to tell her family, who loved me, by the way, and friends, that she was scared of me and afraid to be with me. Everyone knew this was her looking for attention and a way for her to be a victim, but it still hurt that she tried so desperately to slander my character. I found out a few days later that she had dumped all of her stuff at her parents' place and then disappeared for 3 days. So her parents brought most of the furniture back to my apartment. My mother told me she was upset that we broke up, but that I was too good of a guy to have to deal with her BS. That helped a little. A few weeks later, I found out from a friend that within 3 months of our split, she had gone through 4 or 5 different guys, and she was seen with guys even within 1 week of our split. I've also been dumped with a God doesn't blah 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 this relationship excuse. The last time I heard that, I totally called her out and said, "No, by God, you mean your feelings." Story 26. In my experience, young women in liberal arts programs, especially in traditionally artsy cities, are looking for someone who is similarly idealistic and less pragmatic. A close friend of mine, who is an accountant, noted that every time he would mention what he did at a party, girls would literally say, "Oh," and extricate themselves from the situation. Some types of people think you're boring and not following your dreams if you're in a stable job and trying to grow professionally. They want to hear that you're an aspiring author or musician. A few years down the line, many of them will be looking for guys like you, though, when the impetuous nature of youth cools off a bit. Story 27. I had an on-stage dancing performance that involved about 20 people interchanging partners. My ex said it felt like I cheated on her and broke up with me. It was a square dancing church performance. While that was insane, it's exacerbated by the fact that at the same time she had a close male friend that she would spend hours with every day, alone, around 2 a.m, intoxicated, holding hands for stabilization. After we broke up, she was sleeping with him a week later. We were together for a few years before that point. What I've learned from that is if someone blames you for an irrational worry, it's actually them telling you what they're doing behind your back. Story 28. I dated her for 3 months. It was a whirlwind romance. We were both in our mid-30s and pretty responsible, so I think it was surprising to both of us how strong the physical chemistry in our friendship grew. We spoke every day, sometimes for hours. One day, I told her I loved her. When she finally replied, she said she didn't feel the same way and that there was just no spark, despite the fact we only dated 3 months. This was the most devastating end to a relationship that I ever had. She never actually said anything about breaking up or dumping me, and she basically just stopped talking to me. I started drinking and used other women. I told them about her, and they all seemed to think that if I felt so passionately about her, I would eventually feel the same about them. I think it took me over a year and around 6 women to move on. I obviously still think about her from time to time. The happy ending, I met my wife in the same place I met the one that got away. Of course, no 2 relationships are the same, but my wife is the nicest, most loving person I've ever known. Also, we're expecting a baby. You have my sympathy, but be patient. Keep your standards high and just be the person you can be, and you'll find the right one for you. It won't be the same, but it will be amazing. Story 29. There was this girl I went to school with since kindergarten, and she'd started dating this guy in about 10th grade and kept dating him until about 2 years after our graduation. She was really smart and was going to school to be a doctor, and the guy was doing something artsy. I'm not quite sure what. But all in all, she ended up dumping him because he wasn't good enough for her. Of course, she didn't word it like that, but it was basically the same concept as your situation. About 6 months ago, I started seeing this girl. Things went well, except it just kept bugging me how her last relationship ended, and I was scared that I'd end up in the same fate since I'm not in college. I just work at a freaking sawmill making $20 an hour. Big whoop. She was really pretty, smart as hell, great to talk to, loved sports, and was just pretty much a perfect match for me. But my paranoia of not being good enough for her scared me off and made me end it. I kind of regret it. I wish I would have made it last as long as I could. Blah. Just thought I'd share. Story 30. My ex broke up with me through email, stating that she couldn't believe I would break her trust. What she avoided mentioning was that I found out, several days after my birthday, that she was cheating on me and was planning to get as much money out of me as possible so that she could move to New York to be with her ex, a guy that I had considered a friend, someone I was in contact with and talked to daily. Oh, and I forgot to add that I moved 3,000 miles from Indiana to Texas to be with her. In the final 2 months of our relationship, she refused to talk to me. Final straw was a 3-hour car ride to go see one of her friends in which she didn't say a single word to me. Instead, she spent her time texting the guy that she left me for. So later that night, when she went to sleep, I turned her laptop on, read her instant messages to him, and found out the truth. Oh, and let me not forget to mention that she would tell him of my attempts to fix whatever was wrong, buying gifts, taking her out, writing her poems or songs, buying flowers and stuffed animals, coming to her work and buying her lunch and mock them, saying that I was pathetic. I think I covered most of the bases, except for when I got back home to Indiana and within 2 weeks she was asking for me to come back, so we could try things again. I shot her down. I actually told her that she was confused and needed to make a decision as to what she wanted in life. She went on a tirade about how I was so immature and needed to figure out what I wanted in life and what I wanted in a girl. I think that's it. Except when she called me 8 months after that, wanting me to use pictures she took of us together for a video recapping her entire life. I let her use them and then she linked me to the video, which I watched. After I told her that it gave me a sense of closure, she told me that she couldn't get the same closure because our relationship ended up making her hate everyone and everything. She ended up leaving that guy within a year. Yeah, that's all. Seriously now. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're gonna love this. Catch you in that video.